Ares shouted loudly at his comrade to immediately take his things and leave the room. Slad listened calmly to his friend's reproaches, understanding the seriousness of the situation and accepting the fact that only Ares was able to prevent the impending catastrophe and restore balance to the world. The guy sincerely expressed his gratitude to him for the care and attention he had shown, asked him to make every effort to save the world, emphasizing the importance of the mission and calling his comrade a real hero. Slad watched, wondering if Ares could survive without his mighty support. This event marked the beginning of the exciting adventures of the brave hero, a fearless adventurer endowed with the most powerful buff in the world. His enhancement was considered the most powerful on the entire planet, surpassing the abilities of any other being. Now the story of his past began. Last night, an important event occurred. The young man was suddenly kicked out of the hero's group, depriving him of his status as a team member and turning the former active participant in adventures into a retired adventurer. It all started initially with the persistent requests of an old friend, who repeatedly begged the young man to join the hero's group. Slad had hoped that joining the team would be a temporary solution, allowing him to hide his unique talents. He believed that he could help his colleagues while remaining unnoticed, hoping to avoid unnecessary attention and keep his personal life out of the public eye. However, now the situation has changed dramatically, and this was not the issue at all. The problem turned out to be much more serious. The money had completely run out, and there was not a penny left for a return ticket home or food. The young man realized a simple truth. You can't give your efforts to others selflessly, otherwise one day everything that was done and earned through honest labor will be taken away by the very people you helped. Then he suggested looking at the situation from a different angle, considering that it would become a kind of gift of fate for the hero. A feeling of helplessness overwhelmed him. It seemed that nothing could be fixed now. Slad urgently needed to find a job, so he went to the Adventurers Guild, knowing full well that he hadn't looked there for a long time. Guild was engaged in collecting rare medicinal plants and valuable resources, as well as hunting monsters. Then his gaze accidentally stopped on an elderly woman standing nearby. She suddenly dropped a heavy shopping bag right on the tiles, the contents scattering around. The young man asked if she was okay, offering his help and explaining that he simply could not ignore someone else's misfortune. The grandmother sheepishly apologized and explained that with age her back had begun to fail her often, but at that moment she suddenly felt a surge of strength. She was delighted, saying that she felt as if she was beginning to feel much better, as if her body had suddenly become lighter and more mobile. Slad considered this a wonderful sign and was genuinely pleased with the fortunate coincidence. It was full automatic support, and he realized that his abilities probably worked automatically as soon as he decided to help the old lady. The effect was to temporarily increase physical capabilities and compensate for various ailments due to muscle support. As the name suggested, his unique ability was not subject to conscious control. But the young man was well aware that the power of his gift manifests itself only when there is a sincere desire to come to the aid of another person. He was concerned about the condition of the rest of the team. He wanted to make sure that they were okay. Slada suddenly had the thought that perhaps his automatic support skill was not as great as he had previously imagined. After all, we were talking about heroes whose individual skills and mastery allowed them to successfully cope with any obstacles regardless of outside help. The grandmother thanked him heartily for accompanying her. The young man modestly replied that gratitude was not required, since helping those in need was the duty of every decent person. He understood that he could not use automatic support on himself, but he was ready to actively use it for the benefit of others. If he was not able to personally save the whole world, then at least he would try to make life easier for those around him by providing them with timely assistance. The grandmother asked him if he wanted some ice cream. The boy thought it was really delicious and he loved sweets, but he politely declined. But then his stomach suddenly growled, revealing his hunger. The grandmother laughed and insisted that he have some, and the boy gratefully accepted the treat. After a hearty snack, Slad confidently headed to the Adventurers Guild. Here, among experienced travelers and treasure hunters, he was going to start his career as a hero anew, preparing to once again plunge into a world of exciting adventures and difficult tasks. The secretary greeted the guest warmly and asked if he intended to rejoin the guild. The young man explained that he himself had once been a member of the Adventurers Guild, having gone through many trials and defeated many opponents. However, circumstances developed in such a way that he had to leave the profession and retire. The girl made a conclusion and asked if he had an adventurer's badge. Having received the answer that the young man did not assume that the badge would be useful and he did not have it with him. The secretary then asked the young man to fill out a special form, so that the staff could compare the data provided with the information stored in the guild's main office. Slad wondered if filling out the form would confirm his identity, and he heard the girl's confident answer that yes, and that this ink had a magical effect. It could reveal the authenticity of the signatory and check for special talents. The young man mentally admired the ingenuity of the creators and considered it a very interesting fact that an ordinary-looking pen had the ability to recognize the individuality of its owner. Impressed by the magic of ink, he came to the conclusion that he had to write extremely carefully, trying to clearly draw each letter. The secretary warned the guy that she would inform him as soon as his identity check was completed and politely asked him to wait a little. Suddenly, the silence of the room was broken by a sharp, rough voice uttering aggressive curses. The voice clearly belonged to a man who was very angry or furious. The loud curses made everyone present pay attention to the source of the noise. The elf screamed indignantly that instead of entertainment the man could have gone hunting for at least one goblin. Slad noted that elves rarely visited such establishments since they could not stand the smell of alcohol. In addition, the girl was almost naked. Considering the stranger's worn-out gear, the young man assumed that the bearded man was a veteran. As for the elf, it seemed that she had recently left her native land. The man slammed his palm down on the tabletop, clearly intending to tell the girl something important and significant. Slad intervened decisively in the conversation, calling on both parties to the dispute to listen to the voice of reason and try to resolve the conflict peacefully. The elf continued to get heated, indignantly exclaiming that she did not understand the meaning of his speech and asked him not to interfere with sorting things out. The experienced warrior listened carefully to both sides and agreed with the girl's opinion, noting that she was right in this dispute. He believed that he had merely invited her to join the guild, and she should be grateful for the gesture. The elf immediately flared up with indignation upon hearing such a statement. Slad urged everyone to remain calm and not to give in to emotions, emphasizing the inadmissibility of conflicts, especially if the initiator is older, taller, and physically stronger. He also added that any suspicion of bad behavior is unacceptable and deserves harsh reprimand. The man frankly admitted that he had never met the young man before and had no idea he existed. The older adventurer, having assessed the guy's equipment, made a hasty conclusion, declaring him an ordinary loser. The elf believed that he was simply furious. The enraged veteran grabbed the nearest mug of beer and threw it right in the young man's face. He firmly believed that every daring newcomer was obliged to undergo the rite of education, to comprehend the laws of honor, and to learn to behave appropriately. Slad had never expected the disagreement to go so far. It seemed absurd to the young man to start a full-scale duel solely because of a misunderstanding. However, realizing the futility of attempts at reconciliation, he resigned himself to what was happening, realizing that there was simply no other way out. To accept the challenge meant to confirm his own dignity and defend his honor, while to reject the offer meant to expose himself as a coward and a weakling. The girl unexpectedly and decisively grabbed his hand, holding him back from taking rash steps. She screamed that it was her fault. Screaming, the elf admitted that she had crossed the line of what was permitted, having made a mistake that would now have to be corrected. The man seriously clarified that what was happening affected only his personal relationship with the young man, and the girl had absolutely nothing to do with it. Slad abruptly pulled his hand out of her grip, feeling irritated and annoyed by the unexpected interference. The girl and those around her closely followed the unfolding event, expressing concern and anxiety. People silently watched the actions of the heroes, afraid to miss the key moment of the battle. Slad cautiously inquired whether the enemy wanted to have a battle right in the middle of the street, delicately hinting that it would be wiser to retire to some quiet corner. However, the veteran categorically rejected the offer, arguing his opinion by the need to publicly punish the offender. The man quickly rushed into the attack, and the spectators began to whisper that he was the famous bear killer Ganza, an experienced B-class adventurer, recognized as the strongest fighter in the guild and the district. The elf was acutely aware of her opponent's colossal advantage, realizing that her defender's chances of winning were negligible. The secretary thanked me warmly for waiting patiently. She looked around carefully and asked those present if they had noticed where the young man who had just recently been standing right there had suddenly disappeared too. The elf excitedly asked to listen to the story that a guy named Ganza, who got very angry and literally pushed the new guy right out into the street. The office worker worriedly asked if the new guy had black hair, as if trying to remember an important detail. She screamed loudly, confidently declaring that this young man was the mysterious youth she had been looking for. The secretary shouted in fear that it was necessary to immediately go to help Hansa, and the girl standing next to her was shocked by the realization that now it was this man who would have to be saved. At this very moment he was feverishly straining himself, desperately trying to land an accurate blow on his strong opponent. The tension reached its limit. Every second seemed like an eternity. The outcome of the fight remained unpredictable. Slad noticed that this man was like a huge bear. Unexpected speed and wildness that went beyond any limits, and his blows were very strong. In his opinion, such impressive dimensions and aggressive appearance of the enemy suggested powerful crushing blows capable of defeating any opponent. But the reality turned out to be disappointing. Expectations were unjustified. The blows did not impress with their strength and effectiveness. Ganza began to feel a growing anger inside himself, noting the surprising speed of his opponent's reactions, which made him wonder out loud whether it was really that mysterious newcomer in front of him. The young man firmly stated that the assumption was wrong. The problem was not in himself at all, but solely in the insufficient reaction speed of the man, whose fighting style turned out to be extremely slow and predictable. And as soon as the last phrase was uttered, the young man launched a lightning-fast counterattack, swiftly delivering a powerful counterblow. The experienced fighter felt very dizzy, his legs began to buckle, his body began to slowly sway from side to side, losing balance and stability, gradually plunging into a state of complete disorientation. Finally, the veteran's strength finally left him. He staggered, tried to hold on, but in vain, he fell to his knees, breathing heavily and feeling completely powerless, unable to resist the onslaught of the young fighter any longer. The man was genuinely puzzled as to why he was so out of breath. The spectators were bored watching the fight, not understanding who the guy was fighting the veteran. Some even began to doubt whether the experienced Ganza was playing on purpose, allowing the young man to stay in the arena longer, demanding that he stop standing on ceremony and finish the fight. Slad nobly offered to end the fight early, since he did not want to intentionally humiliate a worthy and experienced adventurer, fully aware of the value of the combat skills he had acquired and the respect of the audience. He was genuinely interested in the question of whether such massive and bulky armor that Ganza wears does not at all burden his movements, allowing him to move easily and freely as if it were not on his body at all. The man cried out angrily, insistently demanding that the young man immediately stop any attempts to ridicule his virtues and fighting qualities, perceiving such jokes as a personal insult that deeply hurt the pride of a professional warrior. Suddenly, against his own will, his hand involuntarily jerked forward and pressed his palm firmly to the cold, damp ground. This sudden occurrence left the man with a deep sense of panic and confusion. His hand was stuck motionless, as if paralyzed, refusing to obey the commands of his brain. He screamed shrilly, certain that some magic had bound his movements, turning to the youth with an anxious question whether he had cast some curse or spell that bound his hands and feet. The youth calmly replied that he had done nothing of the sort. Slad explained that the enemy's weakness is due to the fact that the enemy is against him. His special skill automatically weakens the enemy, making them weaker and weaker, making the fight much easier. Hansa exclaimed indignantly, demandingly asking what kind of skill this automatic weakening was. The guy calmly explained that he was talking about a unique skill. Unique skills are talents that cannot be acquired naturally. Each such gift is unique and available once in a lifetime. Those who possess unique skills have gone down in history as heroes. Hansa realized that if this young man really possessed the skill, he posed a great danger. The man felt genuine interest, wondering why the young hero decided to reveal his unique abilities to someone like himself. After all, there are many envious people in the world who dream of destroying the owner of such rare abilities, fearing the loss of their own influence and authority. There are also powerful organizations eager to seize control over these forces in order to achieve their own goals and expand their power. He believed that information about such skills should remain the most secret knowledge. Slad replied that he revealed his secret because he wanted to save Ganza's life and asked him to simply surrender. The veteran flared up, categorically rejecting the very idea of capitulating to his young rival, publicly proclaiming his unwillingness to give in. However, a sharp shout stopped his passionate speech, forcing him to fall silent. The young man explained that if Hansa did not surrender, his muscles would gradually weaken and his bones would begin to break one by one. Without the support of his muscles and bones, his internal organs would be damaged, causing him to quickly lose consciousness and die. The man continued to protest heatedly, proudly insisting that a famous B-rank adventurer would not be able to helplessly capitulate to an opponent. At this moment, a powerful attack was bearing down on him. His face changed abruptly, feeling a sharp pain instantly spreading throughout his body. Cries of despair and suffering burst out, shaking the air, reflecting the full horror of the ordeal he was experiencing. Strange sensations of invisible forces inexorably squeezing the body spread in waves through the muscles and bones, penetrating into the body, causing a painful feeling of complete powerlessness and the inability to resist the oncoming suffering. Ganza let out heart-rending screams, claiming that his strong protective armor had suddenly turned into an incredibly heavy mass of metal, pulling him to the ground and not allowing him to take even the slightest step. Slad explained that this was precisely why he initially inquired about the enemy's armor. The rate of muscle tissue destruction was much faster than expected, showing clear signs of body degradation. If the process continues at this rate, the consequences will be extremely serious and potentially fatal. He turned pleadingly to Hansa, insistently insisting that he declare his desire to admit defeat. The man was deep in thought, staring at the word surrender. The thought of losing to some inexperienced newcomer made him furious and irritated, but the young man hastily convinced him to quickly abandon the continuation of the senseless fight, emphasizing the inevitability of defeat and the potential danger of further struggle. The veteran continued to be indignant, not believing that the legendary Ganza, the strongest in the city, should give in to some newcomer. Suddenly, his friend heard the secretary's voice calling SSS-ranked Slad Sama. The boys instantly responded to the call, synchronously turning their heads in the direction of the sound, their gazes piercing the space, searching for the source of the voice. The secretary explained that the guild master wanted to meet the young man. Hearing the SSS-ranked title, Ganza realized that his opponent was far from a simple newbie. A moment later, the man staggered, losing the last of his strength and collapsed limply onto the cold, rocky ground, disconnected from reality and remaining motionless. Slad smiled inwardly with satisfaction, believing that the situation had been resolved in the best possible way. The enemy had lost consciousness, which meant that the hatred and aggression had disappeared, the threat had passed, and he had once again proven the usefulness of his special talent. Suddenly, there was a rapid stamping of feet, and a figure rushed past the crowd of onlookers, heading straight towards the boy with an incomprehensible purpose and determination. A joyful and excited elf ran up to him, impulsively embracing the young man, enthusiastically shouting about her happiness and relief, continuously repeating prayers of thanksgiving to heaven for the successful outcome of the risky battle. Her heart trembled with fear that he would be exposed to terrible danger and cruel reprisals, fighting for her, a fragile girl who had become the cause of a risk that threatened his very life. Slad sheepishly apologized to her, guiltily admitting that he had unwittingly made her worry and suffer when he heard the name Ithaca. Once again, he sincerely asked for forgiveness for the experiences and worries he had caused, and expressed his heartfelt gratitude to Ethics. After discussing the events that had happened, the assembled people were in deep doubt and disbelief, wondering if it was possible that the secretary had actually announced the arrival of an SSS-ranked adventurer, having difficulty accepting such unusual and significant news. The worker confidently turned to the guild master. The man loudly announced that the guild would like to officially apologize to the SSS-ranked adventurer, Mr. Slad for the inconvenience caused. The young man himself would have preferred that he not speak of it. The guild master could not have imagined that an SSS-ranked adventurer would appear in a small guild like theirs. Slad thought that was behind him. The man admired his modesty and recalled the rumors he had heard from overseas about the famous guest, that he was a weak dragon slayer, incomparable, invincible, and unemployed. Indeed, Slad was somewhat confused, as his normal abilities were quite ordinary, but having two unique skills, Auto Buff and Auto Debuff, allows him to strengthen allies and weaken enemies at the same time, giving him a significant advantage in battles. He dreamed of a new life, hoping that moving to a new world would allow him to leave the past behind. The guildmaster asked what brought him to their guild. Slad was amazed to notice that his interlocutor did not even guess the main reason for the visit. Then he clarified that it was about money. The man chuckled, condescendingly thinking that the hero had simply decided to joke. However, the young man immediately looked him straight in the eye, giving his face an expression of absolute seriousness, clearly showing that what he said was the pure truth, and not another attempt to provoke laughter or attract attention with a remark. The guild master emotionally emphasized that the holder of the SSS-ranked title is granted power, high status, and respect from society, guaranteeing the absence of financial worries. However, Slad honestly admitted that he personally does not have that much money, and he lives in the village and is self-sufficient. The man smiled skeptically again, believing that the revelations he had heard were another prank. But the guy looked at him again seriously and soulfully, clearly intending to convince the listener of the truth of his words. The guildmaster put the jokes aside and reminded that an adventurer with rank S or higher must have a special badge that allows him to use the guild services for free: food, housing, and purchasing goods from the organization's member stores. Before Slad's eyes arose a majestic picture of a spacious palatial estate, surrounded by well-kept gardens shining in the rays of the sun, decorated with exquisite colonnades, creating the image of an ideal idyllic estate. He was delighted by the opportunities that had opened up, realizing that for the first time in his life his high rank would bring real benefits. Meanwhile, hiding behind the trunk of a nearby tree, Ithaca carefully watched his every move. As soon as he noticed the girl's curiosity, she quickly hid behind a branchy tree, nervously hiding her face and awkwardly clasping her hands. Overcome with embarrassment and uncertainty, having come face to face with the object of her adored fantasies, the girls from the group of heroes could not believe that their comrade simply left without telling them anything. Ares did not care what happened to him. Slad himself could not believe that the group of heroes would disband just because he was expelled from there. Leaving their business and worries behind, they immediately set out on a journey to search for the fugitive. Disha was overwhelmed with emotions. She angrily protested, accusing her former comrade of baseness and treachery, deciding to pursue the fugitive until he got even for the insult, promising to give her former friend a strong lesson in justice. Remuri frowned, muttering quietly that such an action was contrary to the character of Slad, whom she had come to trust. After all, it was this guy, who became a teacher for a half-breed like her, who taught her the language. She couldn't understand how he could do that. Disha was irritated by Slad's very existence until she beat him up for betraying his comrades. The young man came across a fascinating book with the history of great heroes, which was located in the city flea market, an amazing place where you could find the most unusual objects and artifacts that could fulfill any whim of the soul. He thought that these stories would surely contain valuable information about the different races. After reading the book, he learned that dwarves are distinguished by their tenacity, physical strength, and agility, while elves, on the contrary, are known for their restraint and almost complete lack of outward displays of emotion. It also turned out that elves are often shy about taking the initiative and have difficulty in forming trusting relationships with new acquaintances. But at the moment when Slad was deep in reading, ethics suddenly fell right on him, causing both to blush from surprise and embarrassment. She looked at him sheepishly, timidly whispering an apology. Meanwhile, the young man noted to himself that this elf was significantly different from the classic images presented in the book. An hour ago, the secretary was surprised to learn that the young man wanted to take a quest about fresh slime from the Karuna ice cave. The boy confirmed this and was going to try the delicious ice slime candy. The guildmaster's expression darkened, thinking that he could eat something like that every day since he had enough money. He thought it would be better if the adventurer did a simple task: tame the dragon LZ in the west. Slad refused, not understanding how the task was simple. Then the man suggested exploring the ancient ruins. The secretary was worried that the table was burning when Ithaca suddenly called the young man. The girl didn't understand what all the fuss was about and realized that there weren't many tasks available to her alone with her rank. So if the guy was free and didn't mind, she suggested doing one of them together. He saw that it was a task to eliminate goblins and said that he was looking for just such an easy task now. The guildmaster reminded that with the training of newcomers, the strength of the adventure grows, the guild will begin to prosper. And along with it, the economy of their bustling town will rise. The man told them to go on a hike and prepare Ithaca well for the upcoming task. Slad understood that they were going on a mission, and there was no money, so now they had to look for vital things at a flea market. The elf asked her companion to look at the dagger she had found, noting that it was perfect for him, but she did not understand why this item was needed, since his class was not thief. While Slad was trying to explain the need to buy the dagger, the owner appeared. The hero began to justify himself, assuring the merchant that his suspicions were in vain. The owner of the store told the guests to just look around while he was gone, adding that if they did not clean up, they would have to pay for all the things. Meanwhile, an atmosphere of pleasant relaxation reigned in the guild and tea drinking began. The secretary realized that they just needed to deal with the goblins and asked why the guildmaster had assigned this task, considering it strange. The man took this as rudeness and confirmed that the task was precisely to eliminate the goblins. Just yesterday, a group of experienced adventurers set out on this mission and never returned. He explained that everyone was whispering about this assignment and avoiding it just in case. Therefore, this mission was considered high-ranking. The boys set off, and Ithaca asked if the goblins were really the size of children. She had seen them in the elven thicket many times, and individually they were weak and clumsy. Slad confirmed this opinion, adding that they became dangerous when they gathered in groups, so sometimes special expeditions had to be sent to clear the area. There are also goblins that attack girls and indulge in indecency. They are called hobgoblins. The young man continued, explaining that hobgoblins are the descendants of a girl from the earth race who became pregnant by a goblin. They are stronger and smarter than normal goblins. Moreover, some individuals can reach a height of over 10 meters. Then came the goblin mages. Slad noted to himself that he was talking too much, and this was not something he should tell a girl. Ithaca smiled, looking at him. She thought he was funny and thought she was bothering him by asking him to join her, but now she saw that everything was fine, and if she needed to assemble a team, she would invite only him. The young man noted that elves usually behaved differently and did not trust people. The companion looked around carefully and noticed fresh goblin tracks on the damp ground, leading somewhere deep into the dense forest, as if inviting her to follow them. And then she noticed their well-hidden lair, a huge cave hidden among the trees and bushes, right in the middle of the mysterious forest, from where suspicious sounds were coming. Slad wondered how they could get rid of the guards. Ithaca remembered that she hadn't told him about her abilities yet and then called someone. She summoned the spirit of the wind, Sylph, who instantly appeared before her, ready to do her will. Slad realized that she was a spiritual priestess and remembered the special skill of priestesses that the more the body is exposed, the more the closeness with the spirits increases. Now it became clear why she was wearing such a revealing outfit. Etika shouted that this is what he thought of her, but he asked her to be quiet so that the goblins would not notice, and asked to borrow strength from Sylph and shoot from here. The elf agreed, but her friend looked more serious than usual. The young man explained that the arrow should split and hit two enemies at once. The companion objected that she had never done anything like this before. Slad believed that he could not help and asked her to trust his friend. His ability, automatic support, suddenly activated. The arrows fired by Ithaca instantly struck the enemies. The girl was amazed at the terrifying power of her new skill. She noted about her spirit that this little one is surprisingly strong, since she was able to defeat three at once. Slad also noted that Sylph is incredibly powerful. Ethics would be happy and glad if her companion would at least praise her a little for her courage and ability to handle the forces of nature. As she spoke, a new enemy suddenly jumped out of the shadows and began to attack again. Slad angrily threw his sword, unleashing all his fury on his opponent, and victoriously ended the fight. Ithaca was confused, thinking that she had shot right at the goblin's vulnerable spot. Slad understood perfectly well that under the influence of the activation of automatic support, it was impossible to miss. The young man made another powerful blow, and the girl screamed loudly, not understanding what he was doing. Slad explained that he was collecting materials and body parts from goblins, because they would help them deservedly receive the reward needed to complete the quest and move on. They used them as proof of a successful hunt, since for each goblin killed a certain amount of reward is due. The boy reminded Ithaca that the work of an adventurer is not nearly as wonderful as that of a hero. Selfish desires like money, fame, and ambition drive them, and the one who is willing to do anything survives. Slad understood that the elf was too kind even to monsters, so merciful that sometimes his hand involuntarily deflected the arrow, depriving it of the accuracy and force of the blow despite the danger of the situation. He had no special skills to teach her. All he could do was show her the harsh reality of an adventurer's life, and decide that she too should test her fate and try to understand this difficult path on her own. The boy understood that this was a cruel method of education, but now she knew the real truth about the dangers of the world, and she had a real chance to return home. Suddenly, from the depths of the forest, heavy footsteps of an unknown creature were heard, accompanied by a strange rustling of leaves and cracking of branches, causing an anxious feeling of danger and tense anticipation of an approaching threat. It turned out to be such a maddened hobgoblin that it paid no attention to the adventurers or the world around it, moving forward on blind instinct, guided only by the thirst for destruction and chaos. Slad realized that the enemy must be hostile to him personally in order for an important effect to work, a debuff that increases the allies' defense and attack. Ithaca immediately began to furiously attack the enemy, visibly enraged and releasing a whole barrage of arrows charged with the power of the elements, trying to quickly end the fight and protect her companion. She angrily screamed for the monster to stop attacking immediately and never dare to touch her family again. The elf was indignant that this was not at all what the young man thought, and Slad did not understand what this meant, and it hurt him because she was beating him. She explained that he had saved her by risking his life, so they were now considered family. Protecting those dear to her heart was her selfish desire, and the girl asked if that was enough to become a true adventurer. Slad suddenly remembered the stories he had been told about his family, and the warnings that elves rarely found common ground with people. But they call their summoned comrades family and treasure these bonds for the rest of their lives. So for the young man, this meant that they say that elves are cold-blooded and distrustful of strangers, but in reality, no one cares about their family as sincerely as they do. Ithaca explained that if the goblin ear is prepared correctly, it will make an excellent medicine that will certainly help cure many bruises. Slad smiled and admitted to her that she was really kind, and he himself dreamed of traveling with her and completing interesting tasks. So the guy officially invited the girl to join his team, to which she happily threw herself on his neck, fervently promising to try her best to justify the trust and prove herself a worthy comrade. Ares screamed, not understanding how his teammate could just leave, to which she responded that she said that her journey as a member of the hero's team was over. Ares exclaimed that his team was not just a bunch of adventurers. He indignantly asked if she had really decided to abandon the team and give up the mission of saving the world, seriously wondering if everything was all right with her head. The girl quickly appeared behind Ares and with a slight grin asked if he wanted to prevent her from leaving the team, deliberately provoking the former leader of the group into a conflict. Unlike the Holy Maiden and the Witch, she is completely indifferent to the fate of this world. She thought that the hero's team would give the opportunity to get more treasures from the dungeons, and at first it seemed that there was no better option. But now Ares has nothing left. In her opinion, everything was going well until the guy who the others thought was just a regular porter left. The leader was angry that the conversation turned to his former comrade again. He didn't understand what that young man had to do with it. The girl said that she had had enough, she was leaving, and she was not doing it because she wanted to run away or become a traitor. Ares shouted that even if that useless man had participated in the battle, nothing would have changed. However, his former comrade calmly noted that this was exactly what she intended to check, briefly saying goodbye and heading home. While the leader continued to rage with anger, the girl felt freedom of choice for the first time in a long time. From now on, she herself determined the direction of the path, but was slightly worried whether Slad was angry. Ares had him, so he himself must understand that in a fit of rage, the former comrade becomes truly terrifying, and she asked him to exercise extreme caution. The man announced that Ares' coming-of-age ceremony had begun and that his skill would now be tested. It turned out that Ares was a natural-born hero. At the age of 15, he learned that he was the savior of humanity and the only one capable of defeating the devil. He didn't care about anyone but himself, but this whole crowd obediently danced to his tune. All that was left was to enjoy the sight of them bowing before him. The hero declared that he agreed to fight the devil, but set several conditions. However, an unexpected obstacle arose in his path, a humble hero named Slad. He was convinced that if this young man disappeared, the girls would finally pay attention to him. He thoughtfully wondered why everything had gone wrong because of a certain porter. Ithaca was indignant that everything around was solid earth, rocks, and sand. She wondered how much longer they would have to wander through this cave. Slad quickly apologized for ignoring her words and explained that the goblins might notice the light of the torches, so it would be better to put them out. It was easy for the girl to do this, but then the guy would not see anything at all. The adventurer understood that over time, his eyes would adapt to the darkness. Previously, his comrade was a specialized thief. Although he walked behind, not noticing the traps, thanks to the imitation of his movements, the Slad was able to successfully bypass dangerous places. It would be easier now that she was with him. Slad explained that she only needed to stay alert and cover him using her night vision ability. Ithaca exclaimed cheerfully that he could rely on her then. But she wondered if it was true that they should be on guard, because that hobgoblin could be the leader. The young man confirmed that he was very large, so he was probably their leader, but he lost his composure so much that he did not even notice the travelers nearby. It seemed as if he was desperately running away, escaping from something terrible and threatening that was pursuing him relentlessly and forcing him to seek shelter away from danger. Ethics suddenly noticed the rattles. She thought such a trap was obvious and primitive, wondering who could possibly fall into it. But while the guy was trying to stop her, the floor suddenly collapsed. The girl began to fall rapidly, but the young man managed to catch her, and she realized that the goblins were more cunning than they had seemed before, having set a trap not only from above but also from below. Looking down, Ithaca assessed the depth of the abyss and thought with irritation that even if the goblins were cunning, setting up a trap in such a way was truly rude and beyond the bounds of decency. Slad understood that the placement of this trap was thought out perfectly, that whether you were careful and went around it or went straight ahead, one way or another you would fall into the trap. Since it was quite clever, he assumed that a goblin mage was waiting for them, capable of using dark magic and casting curses by feeding on the negative emotions of those around him. Slad was worried about whether he could get under the ratchets and came to the conclusion that it was dangerous. If a goblin appeared nearby, they would be at a disadvantage. Therefore, he did not want to risk the safety of his companion and carefully asked if she was able to summon the earth spirit Namu. Suddenly, a tiny creature appeared, a miniature earth elemental that looked like a small humanoid wooden golem. She was happy that she had managed to create such a miracle, and the young man confidently asked her to believe in him, believing that she would cope brilliantly again. Then he decisively activated the fight, making it clear that now victory depended solely on their teamwork and mutual trust. Suddenly, terrifying, evil faces appeared, their greedy eyes glittering, ready to pounce on the prey. The boy announced in a loud warning voice that the enemy goblins were close and preparing to attack. As Slad had predicted, the goblins were masterfully dodging the traps, deliberately creating noise with their rattles to disorient their opponents and confuse them with their next actions. But they also had their own secret trick, a pre-prepared ambush which they set up in the very depths of the cave, which promised to cause a lot of trouble for the enemy. Ithaca actively attacked the goblins, happy that their joint plan worked perfectly. In her opinion, it was a brilliantly thought-out tactical move that provided an advantage in the battle and minimized risks. Slad explained that he was simply reasoning that if everyone was being led by an intelligent goblin, then his subordinates should also know the exact location of the traps. He then looked at her and remembered the spirit Namu, who could control the earth. He helped them greatly enlarge the original hole, turning it into a huge hole. The goblins fled along a route they thought was safe until they were trapped. It was a simple plan, but it would have been difficult for a normal person to set up such an effective trap. The young man learned this from an old friend, that how one can win by outwitting the enemy. Ithaca complained that it was unforgivable to ask the poor spirit to fill the hole, since digging was not easy for him. Slad replied that Namu seemed to be asking her to rely on him, and the girl affectionately called him a hard worker. She curiously asked her fellow traveler if he had found anything, but he remarked that the search was pointless, that there was nothing remarkable here that could attract the attention of adventurers. He suggested that she pay attention in another direction, that the road they had taken here was undoubtedly connected to the rest of the tunnels and passages that formed a complex labyrinth of underground paths. Slad also noticed that there were an unusually large number of fresh tracks here. This means that this room definitely served as a place where different routes intersected, a kind of crossroads that allowed movement between different parts of a huge network of caves and corridors. Ethics concluded that a goblin could appear here at any moment. She suggested leaving her loyal friends Namu here, believing that they would certainly cope with the task of guarding the entrance and warning about the appearance of enemies. Slad gently objected, reminding him that a spirit could only be summoned to one point in space at a time, so he would prefer to walk this path with Namu, hoping to overcome the difficulties together. Ithaca was determined to summon a larger spirit this time, and they would fight shoulder to shoulder together. The boy was shocked by the plan and excitedly asked to wait, claiming that such an act was extremely risky and required careful preparation. The boys were amazed by the majestic sight of Namu's huge friend, towering before them like a massive rock, radiating calm and confidence, inspiring hope for the successful completion of the journey. Slad knew that it was impossible to move forward while the giant spirit was fast asleep, blocking the road with its enormous size and closing the only available path forward. Ithaca sheepishly apologized and explained that she had not intended to call such a major assistant. The young man reassured her, assuring her that it was not her fault, and such an accident probably occurred due to the special influence of his own talent. Its automatically enabled support had its own drawbacks. This ability unconsciously strengthens the object of support. It can be said that it increases the physical strength of the ally and slows down the reaction of the enemy. The ability gives incredible strength, but it is impossible to control. This is why he recently strongly recommended summoning the smallest spirit, to avoid the unwanted consequences of uncontrolled strengthening of the ally's abilities. The goblin, seeing the huge spirit, immediately turned around and ran away in panic, hurrying to hide from the menacing presence and save his own skin. Slad suggested that the main enemy's room was located in that direction, so it was important to prepare for the decisive battle and deliver a crushing blow that would ensure victory. Ithaca firmly believed that she was the one destined to strike, and was ready to make every effort to ensure victory and demonstrate her best fighting qualities. The young man watched in amazement as she deftly sealed the entrance with a thick layer of earth. Ithaca understood that they could not close off all escape routes. When the enemy weakened and tried to escape, a trap would be set up here. They would put the excavated earth in this passage, and then the enemy reinforcements would not get through. The boys shouted in unison, welcoming the start of the battle, full of confidence in their own strength and determination to meet any enemy with dignity, expecting an unforgettable adventure and the glory of the victors. Slad thoughtfully asked himself when was the last time he had experienced such genuine joy from an exciting adventure, full of risk and unpredictable turns of fate. In the hero's room, he heard only swearing, and after his resignation, people challenged him because of his skill. Ethics asked what had happened and why the young man froze in place. The guy thought she smelled nice, added that nothing had happened, and understood that this was what made the adventure real. The elf critically noted that the atmosphere here was not at all pleasing with freshness and coziness. Slad explained that goblins adore such premises, and therefore the magician seemed to be very close. The girl mentally shuddered, imagining that in front of her was a real human skeleton. Suddenly, a roar was heard, raising clouds of dust. It seems the goblins are having a serious internal conflict. The guy guessed that the fire was of magical origin, which meant that the goblin boss who owned such spells was somewhere nearby, hiding and waiting for the right moment to attack. Or rather, it was not just a mage we were talking about, but a creature of the rarest type, a goblin witch, possessing unique knowledge and abilities that make her a particularly dangerous and insidious opponent. Goblins are small monsters that often gather in groups. In fact, high-class goblins are divided into two types: hobgoblins that use physical strength and goblin mages that wield hatred magic. Males treat females as slaves, but occasionally a female can mutate and gain the skills of a goblin mage, and then she rises to the top. Slad realized that this was a rare type of monster, a goblin witch. Moreover, the witch's hatred of oppression by men is different from that which drives goblin mages, and apparently that hobgoblin tried to escape from her domain. The young man did not understand what kind of place this was. He asked Ithaca if the monster was connected to the other goblins and if they should call for reinforcements. The girl asked him to take a closer look. The boy noticed that the goblins had captured the adventurers. The elf noted that there were human bones along that horrific path, and it looked like they were going to use these guys in some strange ritual. Slad thought that this was an impossible fight for a newbie like Ithaca. Besides, this monster probably had some rare abilities. He tried to stop her, but remembered the words that he was just a carrier and a mediocrity. The young man thought Ares was right. After all, he was an ordinary person who did not possess outstanding strength, and his skill worked on its own, so it remained unnoticed. So he tried his best to use numerous items in the rear of the team, but he still remained behind and remained in the rear. But now Slad could help save those adventurers and ethics, despite his apparent insignificance and lack of special abilities. He believed that he would be the hero who would be able to defeat the goblin witch. The young man asked Ithaca to listen and not attack the witch, but first deal with the enemies surrounding her with the help of his Namu, and he himself began to strike at his opponents. He shouted loudly, calling for Namu to continue attacking the opponents. The guy himself carefully made his way through the crowd of enemies, dodging blows and deftly maneuvering between them, trying to get closer to the target unnoticed and effectively. Ithaca did an excellent job, confidently controlling her Namu and skillfully eliminating her opponents one after another. The goblin witch decided to activate a large-scale spell, Fireball, but Slad shouted that he would not allow her to do so, and decided to use a technique that no one had used for a long time and was considered ordinary. However, this technique could be used differently, and the young man activated the skill Provocation. He realized that now the witch's powerful attack would inevitably fall on him. The witch began to reflect an incredibly powerful spell. Ethics urged her friend to run away from here immediately. As a result, his ability Fully Automatic Debuff was triggered, causing shock and confusion among everyone present, who watched the event unfold in horror. Slad looked closely at his companion and asked if she was shocked by what had happened. The witch had not yet realized that she was exhausted, and in her eyes he looked simply amazingly powerful. Therefore, Slad came to the conclusion that the witch would deliberately use poisonous claws and let down her guard. He grabbed her hand tightly, and there was a loud crunch of breaking bones. This ensured protection from any of her spells and poisonous claws, leaving her virtually helpless in the face of an opponent ready to deliver the finishing blow. But the witch's hostility had not yet died down completely. Ithaca came closer energetically and asked anxiously what was going on. The guy clearly realized that the girl was now well aware of his true rank, and the time had come to honestly tell the whole truth, no matter how unpleasant it might be. He explained that the witch was weakened by his unique skill Fully Automatic Debuff. She didn't even have the strength to stand on her feet. The elf asked incredulously about such a unique skill. The guy continued that this is why he lost in the fight with Ganza. The girl was shocked. Slad explained that at first, the Fully Automatic Debuff sharply reduces the enemy's physical capabilities, and with each subsequent second, it causes rapid internal changes that are not noticeable externally. The effect increases with touch, so even a light touch causes bones to break with a characteristic crack. Ethics considered it a powerful skill, but the boy said that nevertheless, if the hostility disappears, then everything returns to its place. The girl realized that the goblin witch born in hatred had no idea how to trust others and felt sorry for her, considering her unfortunate and in need of urgent treatment. The young man noted that it was useless. He said that the witch had a rare skill called Accompanying Curse that made it impossible to kill her with a direct attack. She could only be eliminated by letting her die naturally, poisoning her, or bleeding her dry, so his skill was useful this time. Ithaca suddenly burst into tears, tears streaming down her cheeks, which she desperately wiped away with her hands. The girl realized that the witch was forced to live only with hatred and curse everyone, being a very unhappy creature. Slad sadly understood that it was this destructive hatred that would ultimately lead to the death of the witch, becoming the cause of her own tragedy. He hoped that at least in the next life she would be able to become happy, get rid of suffering, and find the peace she deserved. The adventurers said that they were really saved by them, and were surprised that this creature turned out to be a rare type of monster. If the guys had not saved them, they would have already become part of this sinister temple. One of them mentioned that Ithaca was skilled with a bow, and they were all extremely surprised. Brother also showed himself well, using the taunt technique a great distraction. They soon spotted the exit. A stunningly beautiful landscape opened up before him, filled with green trees, bright sunlight, and fresh air, as if nature had specially created this place for rest of soul and body. Slad congratulated Ithaca on completing her first assignment and reminded her that before they entered this cave, she had stated that her selfish desire was to protect those close to her heart. Those adventurers were strangers to her, but they were people who wanted to protect the city no matter what, so they would celebrate first. The boy was glad that she was able to save them. He reflected on the fact that the elf was truly a remarkable adventurer, capable of overcoming any difficulties, and suggested throwing a grand party right in the bar to celebrate such a significant achievement. Ithaca thanked her friend and was happy to go with him on her first real adventure, realizing that without his help, only crushing defeat would await her. She wanted to continue working with him, and that they would confidently continue their journey, relying on her bow and spirits. She was sure that the next task would be more difficult. Slad remembered that they had talked about this during the mission and wanted to stay with her, and he decided to explain about his abilities as well. Ithaca was indignant that due to his fully automatic debuff, her archery prowess and summoning of the strongest spirit were all his merits, and did not understand how she could accept this without getting drunk first. Slad explained that he could not tell her because she looked so happy. The girl was deeply offended, feeling that her help was regarded as insignificant, since she sincerely believed that she was bringing benefit to her teammate. Slad confirmed that this was true and emphasized that her abilities were simply amazing, and his own skill would be useless without the skill and ability of the support object. Today, she had repeatedly provided him with significant assistance. Ithaca said that they would go to his hotel today, and the guy was literally speechless from surprise. The girl gasped in delight as she looked at his room, claiming that it was simply fantastic, and was especially delighted with the bathroom, noting that it looked simply gigantic and luxurious. Slad thought that she seemed to be going for a swim, and then suddenly realized that he himself was still there and had not gone anywhere. Ithaca assured him that there was nothing wrong with that if he was the one nearby, then everything was fine. The boy realized that he seemed to have heard something, but he decided to pretend that nothing had happened and went for a walk. Then he thought about Ithaca being underage, but he remembered that elves mature much more slowly, and he didn't understand what he was thinking about. The girl asked him what he was doing there. The boy noticed that she finished quickly. After receiving the answer that it was because she was drunk, she looked around, thought that this was exactly the impression one would expect from an SSS-ranked room, and plopped down on the bed. She was glad that the bed was very soft. Slad was shocked by the thoughts that arose in his mind in relation to his teammate. Considering himself a complete idiot, he hastily decided to go looking for sweets, and upon returning, he sheepishly apologized for his long absence, justifying himself by the length of the search for the delicacy. Seeing how peacefully and deeply she slept, Slad smiled, thinking that of course she had time to be tired after her first real adventure, full of trials and excitement. Ethics turned to him and noted that today's adventure had been incredibly fun and exciting. The boy thought about the word fun and realized how long it had been since he had thought about adventures being fun. After completing a journey with an old friend, various characters began to circle around him, interested in his skill. Then he joined the hero's team as a simple porter. His abilities were too well known in the old continent, so he gave up adventuring. However, now on a new continent, together with Ithaca, Slad can make up for lost time and feel like a real adventurer again. But the guy decided that for now it was worth putting these thoughts aside and thinking carefully about how to save money on travel. And it would be better to figure out where he could sleep tonight, because he couldn't just lie down next to her. And besides, the nights on the new continent were very long. Mitty said that here a wild adventurer can quench his thirst for adventure. Accumulated problems and worries can be splashed out on her. She whispered that she wanted him to take her, promising to do her best for their happiness together. Slad was in real shock, realizing that the girl was openly asking him to marry her, wanting to tie their lives together forever. He saw that Ithaca was sleeping peacefully in his bed, looking surprisingly childish and innocent. Then he noticed the notes on the table about the S-rank privileges. In the book, the young man read that one of the perks offered was free nighttime entertainment. Often, a casual relationship between a man and a woman in one night can lead to discord within their team. The guild provides an opportunity to prevent such situations. This system exists not only on the old continent but also on the new one, and he thought it was a brilliant idea. This opportunity differs from a regular call in that you can also discuss the problems that concern you with the girl. Mitty noted that he had done a good job, probably not expecting it to turn out this way. After all, when an elf calls a man of another race family, it means she wants to marry him, such is the tradition of elves, and she was surprised that he did not know this. The girl explained that, first of all, friends are not family. Slad countered that the book he read said that elves call their comrades that. The interlocutor added that it is incredibly difficult for a girl to recognize a man of another race as a close person. Mitty thought that there was nothing surprising about it. The simple-minded elf received help from a complete stranger and an SSS-ranked adventurer at that, and she couldn't understand who wouldn't take it as a gift from fate. Besides, she was ready to become a second wife if he wished. Slad gently pushed her away, reminding her that he could not marry her because he did not have enough money for the dowry. The girl thought that this girl had no friends at home except for the spirits. Among their race, men do not even look at such fatties as elves are considered, and the only people they can surprise are their ability to summon spirits. Slad knew that she could summon spirits and was an adventurer before. Mitty confirmed that with such skills, she could reach the level of a C-rank adventurer and then suddenly kissed him. She explained that if Etika kissed his ear in this manner, it was a proposal of marriage. To show consent, he had to kiss her back. The girl asked to take care of this child, explaining that it was a ritual. Besides, elves are very gentle, but if a man betrays them, they will not forgive it. And if they are teammates, it can be considered friendly. The guy asked to stop luring him onto a dark path and scaring him. Ethica was enjoying the delicious food and invited Slad to come to her. Then she asked him where he had gone, and he replied that he had just gone for a walk. He had barely sat down when his breakfast was already served, and he thought it was wonderful. He had barely sat down and the food had already arrived. After talking with Mitty, the young man did not understand how to look his interlocutor in the eyes, and believed that he was thinking about it too much. And you can't even ask him directly, because if he's really wrong, he'll die of shame. Ithaca bragged that she'd been brought special vegetables for elves. The secretary was shocked to learn that they had defeated the goblin witch and decided to send a priest to bury the dead goblins. She wondered if a normal team could have destroyed such a monster since they were both unharmed. Ithaca explained that they were able to win because Slad knew in advance what skills the enemy would use. The guy added that he once read about it in a book. The worker reminded him that he was an SSS rank. The boy asked if SSS rank was cool and suddenly wanted to find out. The secretary explained that if a person had no skills, they couldn't become an adventurer. Also, to rise above a rank, one had to have one rare skill other than natural. To be more precise, the S rank was introduced so that people with rare skills would know their worth. SS rank belongs to those who have a unique skill, but that alone is not enough. You also need to have significant achievements such as saving a country. S rank is also great, but among SS rank holders, there are exceptional individuals who founded entire countries. Slad asked what the SSS rank meant and was told that it was the title of Savior of the World. He realized that he was being treated as someone who had saved the entire world, and he did not deny that it was quite possible since his skill was automatic. The secretary asked to sign some documents. The guy asked if this was confirmation of acceptance of the reward. The worker explained that this was a marriage application and suggested that he marry her. While the young man was in shock, she added that she was of mature age, and it was enough to simply formalize the relationship on paper, and that she was not at all interested in marital duties. Ithaca sharply objected, and the secretary did not understand why and ordered the strangers to shut their mouths. To this, the girl declared that she was not a stranger at all, but a real comrade of Slada. The secretary came to the conclusion that Ithaca wanted to take him for herself because the SSS rank is prestige, wealth, and power. Ithaca believed that, of course, special rank and money were great, but first and foremost he was a close friend to her, which is why she did not want Slad to marry a woman who only wanted status and wealth from him. The young man apologized to her, and the secretary resigned herself, believing that she had to try, otherwise she would regret it for the rest of her life. Ithaca told him that she would wait at the exit. Slad wondered if she was angry and if he was really that important to her. The worker asked him how he felt about the elf and what his attitude was towards her. The young man thanked Ithaca for not caring about status and wealth and was glad. The girl called the woman crazy. She also wondered if such behavior was normal among humans and learned that even for them it was strange, which encouraged her, although she thought there would be many like that. Slad asked if she wanted to marry him. They had been talking about marriage since yesterday, and the word had slipped out of his mouth. He explained that elves usually call a person of the opposite sex whom they want to marry a family member. The elf was embarrassed and surprised that he knew about it. She explained that it also meant that the elf was grateful and had no reason to marry her. The young man wondered what if he suddenly said that it was not so. Ithaca wanted him to say that when he got to know her better. She thought that getting married right after meeting was quite a hassle. The guy was embarrassed and thought that this confused girl was simply charming. The elf asked him to remove the smile and not to look at her like a grandfather looks at his granddaughter, calling her cute. Slad decided that they needed to buy equipment urgently, otherwise all the shops would soon close, and he had no idea what he was looking for because he arrived on the new continent with absolutely no specific goal. Corrected the mistakes. If we were to explain it as ethics would say, the young man would formulate that she was his family, saying it slowly and with special seriousness, wanting to be convinced of the importance of this fact and feeling that this is exactly how it should be. Their exciting adventures were just beginning. Slad asked again who was waiting for him in the vestibule and was told that it was a thug. The guy was surprised that he introduced himself like that. The thug thought the hotel was very cozy. Shitcha greeted him and asked if he was going to respond to his appearance by saying, "What are you doing here?" The young man believed that he would be able to find him wherever he was. Shitcha was surprised that he trusted him so much. He announced that he had come to him because he missed him, and he had 3 pieces of news, with which he decided to start with the one that would not leave him indifferent. Shitcha announced that soon, without Slad, the heroes' team would be completely destroyed, and this would lead to the end of the world. The heroes' team fought desperately. Disha was surprised to notice that they were unable to finish off the enemy with one blow, which made the fight even more intense. Ares noted that the enemy was stronger than usual. The Holy Virgin admitted that her blood ran cold when he attacked her defensive position. The leader shouted that she was unfairly accusing him of this, to which he replied that she had said nothing of the sort. Rimuri added that Slad was usually the one who helped them by telling them about the enemy's weaknesses on the battlefield. And there was no doubt that even though Slad stood on the sidelines in battle, he was never useless. Besides, she thought that this guy might be a simple porter, but Shitcha was amazingly strong. And after such a significant loss, the leader did not even try to find new members, much less go looking for the missing one. The witch wondered what the hero was thinking. Ares commanded the attack, emphasizing the need for immediate action to turn the tide of battle in his favor. A huge and menacing wyvern appeared before them, towering over the battlefield, ready to rush into the attack and demonstrate all its deadly power, instilling fear in every hero. Slad was surprised by the news that the hero's team would be destroyed, and with sincere interest inquired about the reasons leading to such a sad outcome, which threatened the whole world and stability. Shitcha explained that it was the departure of an SSS-ranked adventurer with special abilities that created a critical situation that threatened the existence of the entire hero team, and therefore, the future of the world. The thug was surprised, thinking that he probably thought that they didn't notice him, but a person who checked the condition of the warehouses every day would certainly pay attention to such a person. The interlocutor did not understand how he could know that they checked his condition every morning. Shitcha continued that after joining the hero's team, the operations to hack and disarm traps went perfectly smoothly, too smoothly, so he began to look for the reason. And if Slad had been even slightly eager to hide, he would not have used his real name. The second thing he wanted to discuss. This is what he himself left the hero's team, because the decision he made helped him stay in the black, even though he felt sorry for those who stayed there. The interlocutor understood that he was not a bad person, and adventurers always have to risk their lives. But he didn't think that the team would suffer a defeat if he was the only one to leave. He assumed that Shitchai's departure was a significant loss, so while he would bury his talents in the local guild, they would move to a big city and find a replacement for him. Shitcha bet a full 500 gold coins that Ares would leave the city, without adding any new members to his team. Slad believed that if he was not with them, the hero would have to deal with the attack alone. The friend claimed that Slad overestimated Ares because he would not look for helpers in a town where there were not even adventurers of a rank and called such behavior reckless, similar to the actions of the former leader. But the interlocutor was surprised, considering that their former leader was an excellent adventurer. Shitcha was indignant, saying that he was too naive, because anyone who starts whining that he needs money will immediately receive everything he needs, and received confirmation that, of course. Slad admitted that he had covered the debts of many people, but he had done it voluntarily, acting as a guarantor, so he had no complaints. Now his friend understood why he was constantly left with nothing, but despite this, his bet still brought success. After all, Ares had left the city the day before with the same team. The interlocutor knew that the attack had to include at least 2 fighters. It was impossible to act alone, because when defending the rear, freedom of movement was lost, the balance was disrupted, and in the worst-case scenario, the team would face complete defeat. He thought it was unfair, because Shicha already knew the right answer when she made her bet. Shicha reminded him that he had warned him not to trust everyone, and his friend didn't even have a chance to object. The thug added that he would not leave him alone. Of course, he did not say a word about accepting the challenge, but the last piece of news he was about to announce would undoubtedly amuse the young man. Shicha confirmed that he was now on their team, introduced himself and said that he and Slad were comrades on the hero's team, expressing sincere joy at the new meeting. Ithaca yelled at him, not understanding why she only now found out that he was on the hero's team. The partner assured him that he was a simple porter and never dreamed that there would be a thug on their team. Shicha believed that as long as he had such an amazing skill, it would be more profitable for him to stay nearby. The elf, having put together the news about the SSS rank and the hero's participation in the team, came to the conclusion that Slad was the very hero who looked too ordinary. The new comrade asked to take his word for it, claiming that Slad was a nice guy. Slad excitedly asked if the hero's team members were in mortal danger, and whether they should immediately go to the rescue in order to prevent catastrophic consequences. Shicha thought that going to save the man who had driven him away was too generous, but as long as Slad remained the team leader, he would obey only against his will. Ithaca, asking if everything was all right, asked permission to intervene. She had heard that the hero was performing many feats. Slad thought that now was not the best time to talk. Shicha confirmed this, adding that the hero used a sacred sword and did not know how to ride a horse. The thug thought that Ares would probably survive and would not be surprised if he used the 2 as bait. Ithaca thought that the new member would fail the probationary period like that. Shicha continued, noting that their hero's image was of a rude and arrogant man without a single positive trait, who did not listen to the opinions of others. The leader wondered if he had any shortcomings. The elf was willing to help those guys, not to mention the hero himself. Slad asked the new guy if he had calmed down and received a positive answer, but the guy still looked unhappy. The leader knew that while pretending to be forced, Shicha was still following the most rational decisions, and it was actually important for him to personally scout out the situation from the hero's team. The thug asked Ithaca to stop Sylph's wind, and the girl herself asked what happened. Slad assumed that he noticed something. The elf, noticing what was happening, asked in bewilderment what he was doing there, and seeing what was happening with her own eyes, experienced real shock, realizing the scale of the threat. Shicha explained that it was the hat of the witch Remuri, a member of the hero's team, and sweating from the horror that had gripped him, quickly disappeared somewhere. Ithaca approached the leader to ask if the man who had recently been there was okay, and the concern in the girl's voice emphasized the importance of the answer needed to understand the situation. Slad replied that no, and Remuri would not have left a parting gift for her mother in the middle of the forest if nothing had happened to her. Shicha returned. He reported that he found neither Ares nor his team nearby, nor any traces of them, nor any corpses of monsters. Slad decided that the hat had most likely been blown in by a strong gust of wind from the battlefield and suggested they return. Ithaca asked them to wait. She didn't understand why they were so indifferent when their friends were in danger. The leader apologized for how things turned out. Shicha added that they understand how it looks from the outside and are well aware of their role. If she continues the path of an adventurer, then sooner or later she will understand everything too. Slad felt that he could not change anything. The thug was persistently looking for a hero, and he himself was from there tracking possible changes. Ithaca apologized for the incident. Comrade assured that he was not angry at all, and he himself became anxious at that moment, but his friend quickly calmed him down. Shicha, although quite sharp-tongued by all accounts, speaks in a calm, measured tone when it becomes necessary to hide his emotions. And at such moments, oddly enough, he manages to calm everyone on the team, including Ares himself. Slad knew that Shicha really wanted to stay on that team. Etika decided to start discussing the new teammates' plan when they found Remuri's hat. She had no reason to be suspicious, but at that moment the expression on his face was terrifying. She knew that Shicha was a good guy, quite greedy for wealth like other thugs, but despite the fact that he wore a mask of cruelty and sarcasm, he secretly donated the money he earned to the treatment of sick people. Slad believed that his expression might be intimidating, but he would never knowingly harm anyone, and he believed that it was best not to jump to conclusions until you heard an explanation directly from him. What is most important is that in the future that Shicha has chosen, they will never regret anything. Shicha shouted that he had found traces and there was no time to relax. Etika said that he and Slad were so close. Shicha was shocked, not understanding where she got that from. The girl did not understand why he was so embarrassed. Slad believed that he should not hear such talk. Shicha announced that he had found out something important. He thought Rimuri was safe since there was no sign of her burial nearby. The elf thought that was a good thing. Slad thought that the Holy Maiden would have taken care of the burial if something happened, but Rimuri was clearly in no condition to fight now. Otherwise, she wouldn't have dropped her hat if she had been conscious. She asked if she had any illness. Shicha pointed out that there were small traces of blood, but if she was alive, she was most likely recovering her magical powers and asked to take a closer look. There was a deep mark in the ground, and the thug explained that it was Disha's unique skill that brought victory with the first attack, Critical Strike. About 50 years ago, the demon king Ushamgar suddenly appeared. He was a unique creature who created a paradise for evil spirits. Under Ushamgar's rule, the monsters became ferocious. They waged war on humanity, and then the demon king cast a curse, enveloping the entire world in a veil of miasma. The curse of the dead rising. Slad knew that the guild usually sent the owner of the sacred skill to bury the bodies. If the body was left, it would fall under the curse. Witches also needed to be buried, but there was no monument nearby, which meant Rimuri was alive. The guy assumed that this cutting mark was most likely left after using Critical Strike. Shicha explained that Critical Strike was Disha's unique skill that could deal a fatal blow to an opponent by identifying and exploiting their weak points. Ithaka was delighted and believed that the owner of such a skill was undoubtedly the strongest warrior. Slad added that it wasn't that simple. After all, the Holy Maiden couldn't fight, she provided a flawless holy defense. The skill that allowed one to win with the first attack was certainly powerful, but the fighting ability was not typical for the owner of holy power. So first of all, the attack is not aimed at monsters, so it can only be used when you are cornered. Slad asked not to mention this to Disha when they met, because although they were talking about her unique skill, it was a special topic for her. Shicha noticed 2 sets of footprints ahead and assumed that Disha was carrying Rimuri on her back and asked them to leave already and hurry. Ares realized that the monster they were facing was of a rare species. The wyvern proved to be far stronger than any other opponent they had ever faced. The hero complained that he felt unwell. Disha explained that this was a normal side effect of the healing process. Rimuri activated a powerful spell, Air Blade. She then resolutely aimed it straight towards the wyvern, cutting through the air and rushing towards the enemy with relentless precision, aiming to inflict maximum damage on the insidious monster. Airblade is a simple spell, but it is especially effective against flying objects. The witch has already used it to knock a wyvern to the ground. Rimuri doubted whether she had managed to shoot down the wyvern, but unfortunately, it remained in the air, continuing to hover menacingly over the battlefield, forcing the heroine to prepare for a new round of confrontation. The failed attempt only had the opposite effect. The wyvern became even more enraged and attacked the girl. The witch asked plaintively for help, looking at the heroes with a look full of despair and hope at the same time. Ares watched the unfolding spectacle with a slight half-smile, enjoying the moment. He mentally concluded that his comrade was doomed, and the wyvern was obviously noticeably hungry. Sarcastically remarking that he was very sorry, the hero remained unperturbed, inwardly rejoicing. While their leader was having fun watching the situation, Disha came to her friend's aid. She instantly set up a powerful protective barrier, reliably blocking the monster's next attack. The girl then activated her unique skill Critical Strike, concentrating all her energy into one precise move. The Holy Virgin rejoiced, realizing that her precise shot had hit the target. The witch desperately called out to Slad, her voice sounding shrill and alarming. Disha agreed, thinking that if he were here, he would probably protect Rimuri just like last time. He was unarmored, a simple porter, and seemed so weak that he could easily die. Ares, laughing, declared that she had done well. Thus, in the end, the girl refused to fulfill her sacred duty. Disha asked why he didn't protect her, since in that situation, wasn't protecting the child his sacred duty? Ares objected, not understanding why his sacred sword would help from such a distance. The Holy Virgin believed that, being a hero, he could at least use the air blade. Ares laughed and pointed out that air blade was a basic skill, and he was so comfortable with his sword that he completely forgot about normal attacks. He didn't understand what the problem was, because even if she died, he would be able to defeat the wyvern with his magic. Disha gave him a resounding slap in the face, thus demonstrating her displeasure and emotional reaction to the hero's cynical statements. She sincerely considered him the last scoundrel who had lost his honor and dignity. Ares indignantly shouted, not understanding how she dared to raise her hand against him, and insisted that he did not understand the significance of what had happened. Disha said that they would discuss everything later, but now they needed to take Rimuri to a safe place. The hero thought that he would take care of them at night, promising to take care of both her and the witch, who was now barely able to stand on her feet. He believed that by completing this task, he would shut their mouths forever, giving them over to be eaten by monsters, and now this annoying porter would no longer bother him. Ithaca asked them to see that even in such a place there was a house. Shicha lamented that how could she have noticed it before he did. The thug had made a bet of 1,000 gold pieces, claiming that they would definitely stay at this mansion. Slad thought that it was not a bet. Besides, the tracks of those two had led here. There were only 2 pairs of footprints there, and he wondered what had happened to the rest of the mansion's inhabitants. Shicha explained that there had been a heavy downpour recently, so it was no surprise that most of the footprints had been washed away. Ithaca asked if they were going there and she had a bad feeling, and the spirits, usually active, suddenly became quiet. Slad, considering the alarming signs, suggested that Shich conduct reconnaissance. He readily agreed, ready to meet any threat and ensure the safety of his friends. Ethics was surprised, suspecting that she might be mistaken in her assessment of the situation. Slad asked the girl to trust her inner feelings and always share doubts if she feels that something is going wrong, emphasizing the importance of intuition in dangerous situations. He added that it was worth doing this even in small things, as sometimes small details turn out to be key in difficult circumstances. The companion agreed. Shicho exclaimed enthusiastically, praising Ithaca for her excellent intuition, and he added that this mansion was actually a monster in disguise. Slad had assumed so, and the girl was in complete shock, realizing what danger they had narrowly escaped, having encountered a deceptive illusion. The leader said that they were dealing with 3 monsters that lured their victims in a special way. The first was a house that waited for and devoured magical animals. The second, a fake hotel, hid crowds of the reanimated dead, which was a real anomaly. And in the third house, a fateful meeting awaited them. Shicha added that when they knocked, no one opened the door, and this seemed suspicious. Slad confirmed that such mansions usually have no owners, so no one answers. The thug added again that Disha would hardly be caught in such a trick twice, which cannot be said about Ares. The leader continued that the one who deals with the dead could not have failed to notice their presence if it was a fake hotel. But there are countless traces missing from this house, so maybe they are facing a third type of monster. Slad's face was covered in cold, sticky sweat from fear. A mysterious figure appeared before them, the Nightmare Fairy. Slad finds himself in a luxurious but empty hall. A girl appears, welcoming him into her dream abode. The young man realizes that he is now asleep. He asks who she is. A small creature flies by, which he recognizes as the rarest Nightmare Fairy. The heroes are shocked that this is a unique monster, and wonder if it is on the level of legendary monsters. It is explained that among all monsters, 16 species are considered the rarest, and their power is comparable to that of a god. The Fairy of Nightmares appears to people in various forms, which is why in some countries she is revered as a god. The mansion is not the body of a fairy, but only one of her forms that wanders around our world. One of the companions panics when he realizes that he has shamelessly approached and knocked on her door. Slad shouts that it can't be nothing serious. The young man thinks that the fairy won't be angry, but a deafening blow is heard. The fairy laughs, saying that she is friendly. The boy realizes that she is not under the influence of the Demon King. The companion says that only a lucky man will be able to get out of the fairy's dreams alive. The young man thinks that she is out of her mind. She explains that, as a rule, those who entered her mansion never returned. The fairy is angry that he wants to leave, abandoning his friends, and says that this is suicide. The companion screams in anger, asking if he understands that the Demon King has plagued their world with curses and chaos. She is horrified to realize that the Demon King is the weakest of the 16 rarest species. Slad concludes that the Nightmare Fairy, being the 8th monster, is somewhere in the middle in strength. The companion screams in panic that this means a new invasion, another Demon King. The young man says that their companion Ares will definitely not cope. The girl suggests not to go there because you can only return if you are lucky. It turns out that the fairy does not send nightmares, but shows people the embodiment of their innermost desires. The young man turns to his companion. The hero says with a confident smile that he thinks they can handle it. She asks him on what grounds he decided so. He replies that he has already fought a unique monster. The companions are shocked because they are hearing about it for the first time. He explains that he ended up there completely by accident. Slad says that this time he doesn't have that team with him. Now he understands why he gained fame and SSS rank in the old continent. He decides that first of all he needs to talk to the Nightmare Fairy and persuade her to return the boys. His companion is shocked by his intention, but immediately volunteers to protect his rear. He asks her to stay, saying that if the plan fails, she will have to report to the king. He apologizes, realizing that she may not be able to survive if she is left alone. The girl asks with a smile not to worry about it, accepting her role. Slad thinks that everyone has their own role, and without her warning, they would mindlessly enter the dream world. He approaches her and says that she did an excellent job. The hero declares that it is now his turn to play his role and heads towards the mansion. He approaches the door, thinking that he probably needs to knock 3 times. He understands that this is a dream, and in front of him is the Fairy of Nightmares, with whom he came to talk. The fairy is delighted that he realized that he was sleeping, because everyone forgets about it when they come to the abode of dreams. The young man suggests that this is because he has no desire to drown in dreams. The fairy says that the desire to talk is wonderful, and she is obliged to show him due hospitality. He finds himself in a hall full of music and treats created especially for him. The fairy offers him to eat whatever he wants. The young man does not understand what is happening because it is just a dream. The fairy angrily asks if he dares to underestimate her dreams. She explains that everything that happens in this dream takes shape in reality. Slad understands that a fairy cannot create something that she does not want herself, and that to die in a dream means to die in reality. The young man says with a smile that if she insists, then he agrees. The fairy is delighted to realize that he likes her and takes on a sweet appearance. The young man thinks that he almost fell for it and understands why no one wants to leave here. The fairy explains that getting out of the dream is simple. As soon as he wishes to wake up, he will immediately wake up. She says that he doesn't need it because here he can spend a carefree life. In reality, his companion tries to wake him up, saying that he was completely exhausted last night. The fairy is bored, saying that he is not losing his head. She understands that he is already satisfied enough. The companion thinks that if it weren't for the guild, everything could have ended much worse. The fairy asks what he wanted to talk about. Slad wonders if she can read the minds of those who enter. She strictly says that it is forbidden to wake up those who have arrived at her abode, because it is only they who decide whether they want to wake up. The girl says that she will fulfill his wish, but she wants to hear the request personally from his lips. Slad says with determination that he will say it then. He asks her to let him go into their dreams. The hero finds himself in a strange white forest, not understanding what kind of place it is. A little fairy appears and is glad that he invited her along. She explains that many people know her, but not everyone wants to spend time with her. The girl says that this is a witch's dream, and that among the 3, this child most desires to meet him. Iris asks why Odette is so thoughtful. She replies that she has been wondering about one thing ever since she overheard them talking about the past. She wonders what will happen to the hero's team without such powerful support, and believes that he is underestimating his role. Shicha explains that at first she didn't realize how much her powers had increased, and thought the spirits were just in a good mood. It took her a month to realize that she was under the influence of a buff, and that Slad was also weakening the opponents. They discuss his caution. Shicha says he is naive and easily revealed all his cards when they formed the team. And they come to the conclusion that he wasn't trying to keep anything secret, and he must have had his reasons for doing so. The girls look at each other, anxiously and curiously asking what his reasons could be. Ethics admits with a loud laugh that she has no idea. Shicha teases her about why she put on airs. She assumes that Slad told her everything because he fell in love. Ithaca blushes, saying that would be cute. Shicha thinks she's found a new excuse to tease her. Shicha explains that Slad seriously believes his abilities are mediocre, and that he should be more confident. Ithaca can't believe that this is possible with his SSS rank. Shicha asks her to imagine her life without her abilities as a spiritual priestess. Shicha explains that they are inseparable from their abilities, but Etika still considers himself an ordinary adventurer. She says that unique skills are part of who they are, but Etika counters that he should at least feel cool. Shicha reveals the truth, saying that Slad cannot use his abilities. She explains the meaning of the word automatic. Their skills are up to them and they activate them at will. But Slad can't do that. His automatic skills work regardless of his desire. Etika asks if that's why he's so indifferent. Shicha replies that he simply doesn't think his skill is all that amazing. The girl says that it is quite sweet, because such abilities free one from the burden of responsibility. The voiceover says that it is not easy to come to terms with the consequences of your actions. Shicha gets angry, saying that Ithaca's skill is no less amazing. She gets embarrassed, and Shicha admits that he envies weak guys. He sees Rimuri's hat and her dying mother in front of him, which plunges him into memories. Slad realizes that it is Rimuri and decides to see which of the girls is the one they are looking for. The hero notes that Rimuri is a half-breed, and both of them are no different from ordinary human children. He understands that her wish is to be born as an ordinary girl. The fairy asks what he is going to do. Slad decides to come over and greet her in a friendly manner, complimenting the weather. The fairy is delighted by his greeting. He thinks that she praises him for every little thing. The witch greets them as dear guests and asks how she can help. A little girl runs up to him. He asks if she is Rimuri. The girl admits that she likes him, and he thinks how different she is from that witch. Slad invites little Rimuri to go home together, explaining that they are in a dream and he has come to pick her up. The girl refuses. The fairy says that he will not harm her, but he feels sorry to destroy such a happy dream. He says that he is leaving then and says goodbye. The witch asks him to think about it and stay with them. She asks if she would be okay with a second child, hinting at someone else. The half-breed girl hides behind the witch. He wonders who she is because they seem to be the same age. The witch says he is not part of her dream. He replies that he is expected elsewhere and leaves. He leaves, apologizing to her. The witch calls him Slad. He stops, recognizing this room. There is a sparkle of determination in her eyes, and she says she doesn't want him to leave. He realizes that this is the same Rimuri he knows, only the age and clothes are different. The hero asks her if she hates her demon blood. She replies that of course she does. She laments that if she had been born mortal, this would not have happened. He remembers what she once told him. He remembers her words about how she can't forget that they don't sell anything to demons. She remembers how people were afraid of her, and he was the only one who did not turn away from her. Slad was the only one who called her by name. She thinks with tears in her eyes that he has recognized her completely. He asks her if he can hear it again, and he remembers what they said in this room, and he thinks that he said something stupid, but she doesn't think so. Slad tells her that she is beautiful just the way she is. He asks her with a smile if she remembers her goal. Rimuri confidently replies that he remembers. They stand before a huge ornate gate. She declares with incredible determination in her eyes that she wants to defeat the Demon King. The girl wants the world to accept half-breeds. He thinks it's hard because she'll still be despised. He understands that she knows this but still chose this path, although she knows about all the difficulties. Slad says it's time to go then. The fairy announces it's time to wake up. The girl recognized this place. Her companion at that moment said the girl's name Rimuri. She wished me good morning with a smile. The hero noticed that it was the real Rimuri in front of him, and not her image from his dreams. Slad, noticing the absence of a hat, patted Rimuri on the head. Two girls appeared in the forest, one of whom called the other Rimuri. Rimuri asked Shicha where she had been all this time. The girl replied that it was a long story and added that something needed to be returned first. Rimuri noticed that the object she was holding was very dirty. She asked her mother for forgiveness. Etika suggested calling the domovoi, claiming that he would quickly fix everything. She introduced herself as Slad's new friend. The woman indignantly exclaimed that she understood the meaning of what was said, but did not see her involvement. One of the girls suggested calling on the spirit of the dwellings to fix the hat. Under the night sky, they offered to exchange information before the hero returned to the mansion. Sitting around the fire, the heroes discussed Ares, who in their opinion lied and drove Slad away, but his actions still turned out to be predictable. Rimuri explained how Ares caused the team to encounter a rare wyvern, and Disha saved them from certain death with a critical hit. After this, Disha carried Rimuri on her back, and Ares insisted on spending the night in a mansion found in the forest. The Holy Virgin, although initially against it, agreed to rest, realizing the need for it. Both girls agreed that Ares was the worst hero, and it was terrible how he could have failed so badly. Slad said that Ares is still a hero, no matter what they think. Rimuri expressed confusion, asking why the title of hero was so important. Disha was surprised that someone might not know the importance of the hero title. Ethics confirmed that the Demon King currently reigns in the world. It is mentioned that the Demon King is immortal, and there is also talk about a new, weakest of the rarest monsters. The Demon King, different from mortals, has cast a curse over the entire world. Under his rule, the once friendly monsters became cruel and began to attack people. To defeat the Demon King, the hero's sacred power, which Ares currently possesses, is required. The girl apologized for the inconvenience, adding that only the Demon King was to blame. Slad was shocked to hear the hero compared to a monster and wondered if she really hated Ares that much. Ethics asked again if this stupid bastard was really the only one who could save their world. Hero skill is rare but not unique, and it may be possessed by someone other than Ares. Slad expressed doubt that such a thing was possible. Disha confirmed that the hero skill does exist, but it only appears once every hundreds of centuries. It was clarified that there had never been multiple heroes at once. The girl expressed regret that Slad was not a hero, claiming that it would have been better if he had been. Slad apologized, calling himself a simple unemployed guy. The girl countered that he was not simple. Rimuri hugged Slad and called him a brave unemployed man. Disha added that his feat was much more significant than heroic. She said that the hero not only awakened from the Nightmare Fairy's sleep, but also brought back Rimuri, and this act could become a legend. Slad was quick to retort that the Nightmare Fairy was friendly, and asked that his feat be kept secret to avoid publicity. Rimuri announced that she was leaving the hero's team and wished to become Slad's companion. She reminded her that the Demon King could not be defeated without the power of a hero, and asked if she was giving up on her goal. Rimuri objected, certain there was another way. Disha exclaimed cheerfully that this was true, and Slad suddenly realized something. Slad finally understood why he was pushed to follow Ares, realizing his true purpose. Disha admitted that the Wyvern and the Nightmare Fairy were not part of her plan, but she still felt remorse. The girl felt relieved. The girl expressed her apologies. The two characters admitted they had no idea what they were talking about, but Shitcha decided to run away with the narrator. Rimuri demanded an explanation from Slad. Slad stated that his goal was to teach Ares a lesson and teach him the value of friendship. The young man abruptly interrupted his explanation, exclaiming that he wanted Disha and Rimuri to leave too. The girls angrily reproached the hero for not remembering the main goal, defeating the Demon King, and called him good for nothing. One of the characters asked if they were talking about Ares. Disha urged them to realize the importance of their skill, while someone asked what Slad's skill was. Ithaca enthusiastically called Slad her hero, and Slad realized that Rimuri now knew about his abilities. The heroes admitted that they did not yet know how to get by without the hero's power, but expressed confidence in their success. Slad stated that they are capable of assembling a team that can defeat the Demon King. The characters expressed confidence that someone would definitely return. The hero realized with surprise that he was now fighting with this girl. Slad reflected on his arrival in the vast world he called the Holy Maiden's Dream. The Nightmare Fairy greeted him, and Slad expressed his joy at seeing her again. Nightmare confirmed that they were no longer in the mansion and assured Slad that she remembered his wish. Nightmare said that it was not difficult to fulfill such a significant dream. Slad thanked Nightmare, musing on the importance of nobility in the dream world. He suggested calling her Nightmare, using part of her name, thinking it appropriate for a Nightmare Fairy. Surprised, the fairy asked why he named her that. The hero thought he had crossed the line and asked why she did not care about herself at all when thinking about her desire. Nightmare asked if Slad was referring to her true nature and stated that the only thing she cared about was his desire. Slad noted that fairies do not have a true form in dreams and explained that Nightmare's image was created as an embodiment of his desires. He himself created this image of a wish-fulfilling fairy he had read about in the past. Nightmare confirmed his words. Nightmare said that the meaning of her life is to see the happy dreams of travelers, and clarified that the form does not matter. Slad noted to himself that it was no surprise that she was a monster, specifying that she was a unique species. Nightmare explained that Slad could converse with her in this form, and his joy made her happy, making it more than just part of a dream. Slad expressed his delight. She said that Slad was the first one to make her dream come true. Slad was surprised that she had a dream. Nightmare suggested postponing the conversation about her dream, noting that now it was necessary to fulfill Slad's wishes. Slad realized that she was clearly evading the question and decided that they needed to find Disha. He noticed the perfect row of divine statues and felt an air of grandeur in the air. He admitted that it was certainly a temple, but noted that it was so terrifying and did not look like a sanctuary. The young man wondered why there were only monks here and no priests. Slad noticed that the monks hardly looked like believers and realized that monk was a combat specialty. The hero realized that people of this profession devote their free time to training in the garden. And although this is a dream, the sight is quite strange. Suddenly, Slad was struck by the sight of the girl who looked so impressive. He described her as having greenish gold hair, blue eyes, and a slender body, and noted that she looked the same age as Disha, whom he knew. Slad noticed that the girl was wearing the same training suit as the monks wandering around the temple, and that it was not a sacred vestment. Only a glove remained from the Holy Virgin's robe. The hero admitted that it was a fine image from his memory. He added that he did not understand religion, but her prayer pose now hardly looked sacred. The young man was surprised that he, as an outsider, was entering a place where the path was closed to others. Slad exclaimed that it was enough to just wish, and he realized that Nightmare was right. He saw Disha and said her name. The hero was shocked when she struck him. Slad was amazed by the amazingly accurate roundhouse kick, and noted that the real Disha was not capable of such a thing. He assumed that this was her desired appearance and he should have died instantly, but he managed to avoid such a fate. And I realized that his automatic debuff had worked, and concluded that he was not welcome. He remembered that it was very clear that in sleep the skills were inactive, and wondered how her critical hit worked. Slad thought that in the worst case, he will die. Slad realized that death in a dream meant death in the real world, and he told himself not to think about it. Then he realized that she too might die from the effects of his skill. Slad tried to address Disha, but she ignored him. He asked why she was attacking and asked in surprise, "Aren't they friends?" Disha said that she wanted to finish him off with one blow and told him not to resist. Slad interrupted her. Disha added that he himself knows perfectly well that he deserves it. The hero still didn't understand why she attacked him. Disha accused him of leaving them so irresponsibly. Disha emotionally stated that she trusted him. She looked closer in surprise and recognized the real Slad. Slad said he wasn't sure what had happened, but the skill had worn off. He noted that it didn't excuse the fact that he hadn't even said goodbye to them before leaving. Watching Disha, Slad guessed that she was probably unconsciously trying to eliminate the disturbance and continue enjoying her sleep. He realized that the story of his escape had been a lie from Ares, who had in fact simply kicked him off the team. Disha exclaimed that it would be quite fair to hit him once. Slad remembered that he had similar thoughts back in Rimuri. He didn't trust the team, even though he called them friends. He thought that nothing would change if he left, and the only thing that mattered was the existence of his skill. However, Slad thought that they were still trying to find him. Disha asked what was wrong. Slad promised that he wouldn't disappear this time. The hero asked if she meant that they were currently sleeping in the mansion of a unique demon. Disha warned Slad that if he decided to joke, he should prepare to get another scolding. Slad suggested going to the temple to see for themselves. Disha countered that a dream was an imperfect reflection of reality, and in a dream world everything would not be so believable. She thought about it. Disha agreed. She added that she would have refused if Ares had offered. She thought that perhaps she would believe it when she saw these strange monks. The girl was shocked by the situation. Slad noticed that Disha simply did not want to believe that they were in a dream, and explained that all this was created subconsciously. The hero turned to someone with apologies. He thought that there was nothing unusual, but then concluded that it seemed that it was not so. Slad said hello but was only greeted formally, despite his attempts to attract attention. And he was indignant that everyone was ignoring him, although they could have at least greeted him. To which Disha noted that they were busy. Slad wondered if Disha's dream was to be ignored by the temple ministers. He countered that Disha had lived in the temple since childhood, and it was impossible for any priest not to try to talk to her. The young man seemed to understand, but wondered if he could intervene, worried that his insistence might hurt Disha. She said she wanted to return to practice. The hero understood what was going on. Slad thought that this was not quite true and remembered that she remembered him and the hero's team. He told Disha that she was the Holy Virgin. Disha tells her parents that they won't believe in something. Little Disha, for whom her father receives a sack of coins, was given to the church. Disha's parents apologized to her, and she, through tears, asked them not to cry. The girl decided that she had to be strong. Slad told Disha that she was the Holy Virgin, but she replied that she had only recently taken the path of a monk. The hero wondered if he should intervene and asked Disha if she really wanted to defeat the Demon King. The girl replied that it was everyone's dream and everyone would be grateful if she could do it. Disha concluded that people were relying on her, and that was great. Slad asked if Disha was one of everyone who wanted this. The hero remembered that Disha had once healed his wounds when saving Rimuri. Disha confirmed that she remembered it perfectly. Slad had not been the target of the attack then, so his skill had not worked and the wounds were terrible. Slad and Disha discussed that Disha was always like this. The girl noted that a simple porter was so reckless. Disha said it was nothing, and Slad thanked her for her help. Slad noted that Disha had always been like this, and it was no surprise that she didn't hear please in response to her gratitude. He realized that healing wounds and saving those in need were the duties of the Holy Virgin. The young man was glad to see that even in her sleep, Disha was still just as kind. Slad, looking at Disha, suddenly realized that monks could not use healing magic. The crowd of people exclaimed that the Holy Virgin was here, although someone said that she was not. The people begged the Holy Virgin to pray to God for their well-being, to help the hero defeat the Demon King, and to show the world God's blessing. Slad realized that Disha was playing the role of a priest in her dream, and this was a common sight in the temple. Slad asked Disha to remember, apologizing for his intrusion. The hero explained that when a holy virgin is born into this world, she becomes what others need, no matter what she dreams of. He added that her talent is like that of the hero, and she cannot give up her role. Slad concluded that Disha wants to save this world with all her heart, and this is reflected even in her dreams. Disha remembered that she was the Holy Virgin. She just has to choose who she wants to be, Holy Virgin or monk. Slad suggested Disha not to try to forget anything. The girl called him irresponsible. Disha asked if she couldn't be happy that she was born with a unique skill. Slad thought it was okay that she couldn't be who she wanted, but reminded her that she wanted to acquire a combat specialty. The heroine said that Slad is the only one who allows her to choose, just like that time. The girl said that she could only hear such words from Slad. Slad replied that she would hear his answer now. Disha, now in the form of the Holy Maiden, addressed the believers, saying that they had been praying for victory for many years and could now rest easy. She promised to fulfill her duty as the Holy Maiden and put an end to the long war with the Demon King to restore peace to this land. The girl vowed to bring them back to serenity. Disha touched Slad's head and said it was time to wake up. Slad realized that this was probably a real dream. The hero, leaving the mansion, noted that he did not know that Disha dreamed of becoming a monk. Disha replied that she didn't really want to become one because it was her duty to help ordinary people. She added that she always did only what was required of her. The girl admitted that she constantly tried to convince herself that this is exactly what she wanted. Her desire was to find her own dream. Disha agreed to rescue Ares as soon as possible. Ithaca agreed that it was best to leave him sealed in this dream. Rimuri suggested that Ares might be a good-for-nothing scumbag. Disha countered that they had been partners until recently. Rimuri said that they couldn't give up their one and only lifelong goal because of personal feelings. Slad thought that Disha was still as adamant as ever. He compared her to peas against the wall. Disha declared that it was her duty to accompany the hero and save the world. Disha asked what difference it made even if Ares was strong only because of Slad's skills. She said that there was no reason to hope for another wielder of that gift to exist in their time. Disha noted that only with Ares' guidance could they defeat the Demon King. Slad added that he didn't think she was that stubborn. He apologized, saying he had nothing to add. Slad refused to help Ares. Disha regretted that they didn't understand. The girl asked Slad, who had remained silent the whole time, to say what he thought about it. Slad confirmed that of course Ares needed to be awakened, and that was the plan all along. She asked him if he would return to the hero's team if Ares accepted him. Slad said he had one condition. He didn't want Ares to know about his skills. Disha was indignant that he wouldn't be so arrogant if he heard about his abilities and asked what was wrong with using skills. She asked him to be quiet. The girl continued that it was natural for people to use their gifts and asked if he was so against working for the good of others. She asked how personal principles could be more important than the fate of the whole world. Slad replied that it was not easy. Slad called Disha. She said that it was not about that at all. The hero explained that, upon learning of his skills, Ares would stop engaging in combat altogether. Slad explained that, upon learning of his skills, Ares would stop engaging in combat altogether. He added that he didn't realize it right away, just like the others, and it was the person who asked him to be part of the hero's team who said it. Slad said that at first it seemed like it was his situation, but it wasn't. It was a shock for Slad to hear about Ares' true nature. In fact, the hero's team is just entertainment, and as long as he is the only one who can save the world, he is allowed to do anything, and everyone around him should only praise the hero. He explained that only Ares can defeat the Demon King. He does not need anyone. Slad continued that this man didn't care about saving the world. He was driven by a thirst for power, and a boundless ego was all that was left of the honorary title of hero. Otherwise, he wouldn't have gone to certain death-fighting monsters. One of Slad's companions still believed that even Ares had at least a drop of conscience. He asked if they seriously thought their hero would put his life on the line. Slad explained that Ares considered himself the center of the world. Disha noticed that they were all not without sin, and each of them in childhood imagined that the whole world revolved around him. Slad added that these were his friend's words, and even after becoming a hero, Ares never matured. The companions nodded, saying that they already realized that Ares was acting like a child, and asked what this had to do with his skills. The hero explained that his abilities worked automatically, and they would not dance to Ares' tune. The companions admitted that things did not become any clearer. Slad said that this was Ares, and he would never accept help from anyone. Disha pointed out that their strength was still not enough to defeat the Demon King. Slad replied that this was why the hero would have to allow him to interfere, and he wouldn't want to. The companions were amazed to realize that this was the reason, and exclaimed how it was connected. One of them asked if Ares did not look like a child. He said that maybe they think it's a small thing. Slad confirmed that it was so important to Ares, and she was so important that he was willing to entrust their world to the Demon King. The hero said, "Who would have thought that the key to the hero's strength is self-love?" He said that Ares, the chosen god, defeated the Demon King by asking for help from a worthless porter. Slad concluded that Ares would never accept this. One of the companions said that this was not true. She reminded them that they were raised with the goal of one day saving the world with the hero. Slad thought that once he too had thought that he could be relied upon, but he had been wrong. He called it too dangerous a mistake and added that he now understands it. Disha said okay, and they won't tell Ares about his skills after they wake him up. Slad thought that in the end he had convinced everyone, and it was decided to save the hero. Ithaca asked Disha if she was confused. Disha confirmed that she seemed to be lost. Disha noted that this was unusual, since she had always had to move forward only to fulfill other people's desires. Ithaca asked why, instead of worrying about the unknown, she could not think about new possibilities. Ithaca asked Disha how each of them would hit Ares once. Disha apologized, saying that she didn't expect someone like her to say something like that. She thought that for some reason she felt like he had other plans for the hero besides saving the world. She noted that it was so strange, they had only met today, but it was as if she had known ethics all her life. Disha turned to Slad to save the young man. Slad replied with a smile that this was a responsible assignment. Nightmare having appeared called Slad, saying that it was time to move on. Slad asked if there was any problem. The fairy explained that the Holy Virgin had generously waited for his apology and added that the little witch herself had wanted to see him. Nightmare replied that the hero was not like any of them. The young man asked her if he could see a dream, but she advised against it. She explained that some people's cherished desires can be others' nightmares, and each dream is the owner's personal world. The fairy asked if Slad still wanted to go. Nightmare added that some souls should sleep forever, as they will see the dreams they desire and will not be able to harm anyone in the real world. Slad countered that this was not the case, as their hero was the only salvation from the Demon King. Anyway, Slad stated that he would wake Ares. Slad thought that the guys trusted him and they should definitely return him. He also wondered if Ares had the right to run away after all he had done. Slad concluded that he didn't think so. Slad asked Nightmare if something was bothering her. The hero said that it was obvious from her. Nightmare got angry that he was able to read thoughts himself and that she was not alien to feelings either. Nightmare said that he only wanted to get into her soul and that she also wanted to get naked in front of him. The fairy exclaimed that her true face was the night sky and what a wonderful dream she had. Nightmare said that these lonely stars are someone's sweet dreams. She added that they all sleep in her. The fairy said it was rude to call them victims. She explained that they were here because of a cruel reality and an unfortunate fate, and she was helping them fulfill their deepest desires. Slad said he understood, but Nightmare interrupted him, saying that she knew what he was going to say. Nightmare turned to Slad and said that she also had a cherished dream. The girl said that her dream is to invite everyone in the world to her abode and give them sweet sleep forever. Slad was surprised. Nightmare replied that this applies to him too, no exceptions. The young man heard a knock and was sent an urgent message from the Holy Virgin from the hero's team. Slad read the message. The hero's team encountered a monster of a unique kind, a nightmare fairy, but thanks to the active intervention of a group assembled by a specialized thief, the witch and the Holy Virgin were saved. The third visit to the enemy's abode was crowned with success with the liberation of the hero. The hero continued reading that, however, the man called the porter is now unconscious. Therefore, they asked for urgent help from the king. The youth said that the hero's condition was stable and his mind had cleared. The king ordered to wait. The king asked whether he had just mentioned the porter. The girls called Slad. One of them, pointing, exclaimed that Ares was also there, lying on the ground. They asked if they had lost and assumed that it was in the past. The girls were confused, wondering what had happened. They realized that something had happened in their dream. The mansion had disappeared. Disha added that the other boys had returned alive, but were still not waking up. She noticed that he seemed to have fallen into a coma, and even the sacred spell of forced awakening was powerless. The sweet was lying on the ground. He found the nightmare fairy and exclaimed that her dream was too cruel. Slad asked the fairy if she would remain alone forever. The fairy confirmed that dreams are not connected to each other in any way, and communicating with someone in a dream is equivalent to talking to yourself. She explained that sleep is eternal loneliness, but it seemed to her that her abode was an ideal world that made dreams come true, and therefore everything was fine and everyone was spending time happily without looking behind the scenes. The fairy admitted that this was the case until she met Slad. Slad was surprised when Nightmare stated that he was the only one who did not lose his memories when he stepped into the mansion. The hero asked again with disbelief. The fairy confirmed that others had come to chat, but they could not even remember what a sleep was as soon as they entered the dream abode and completely forgot about their desire to talk to her. The fairy told Slad that he was different from others because a forgotten dream cannot be realized in a dream. She admitted that she was too happy about his arrival because it was an unprecedented joy for her, and only with Slad she managed to talk. She added that thanks to his strong desire to meet her, he was able to fulfill another of her dreams. The fairy concluded that everything before was a mistake, and talking to someone who is not sleeping is so much fun. Slad looked surprised when the fairy stated that she didn't know this. Nightmare said that perhaps with her dreams, she gave salvation to someone. In fact, so many souls have lost forever what was dear to the hearts of people. Slad apologized to Nightmare. The hero hugged Nightmare, saying that he always thought that her dreams were created out of bad intentions, but in fact she was very kind. Slad said that he was lucky and he probably didn't forget her thanks to his automatic debuff, which probably just considered her power dangerous and deactivated it. Nightmare corrected him, saying that his skill did not only affect the illusion but its effect was weakened. The youth added that he was immortal, so the aging effect could not harm him in any way. Slad asked if this meant that the effect of the automatic debuff was strong against the Demon King, and Nightmare confirmed. The girl says that the hero has affected her unique power. It turns out that he will be useful in the fight against the Demon King. If he destroys her himself, then there will be a chance of victory. Nightmare admitted that wherever she went, the mansion's guests would continue to disappear without a trace into the dream world, and that she was unable to control her abilities. She begged Slad to touch her. Slad looked at her, and Nightmare suggested checking if it was possible to kill an immortal. She added that he should not doubt. He would not be able to enter the hero's dream at his will, and there was only one way to wake this child. Nightmare stated that she would have no regrets if she was destroyed by Slad. Nightmare smiled and told Slad not to make such a face, because it was wonderful. Slad refused. The hero told her not to be so angry, because her words were much more upsetting than that. Slad asked in shock how she could ask a friend to kill himself. The girl asked if they were really friends, and he asked how they could not be friends after all that had happened. The young man added that, first of all, he could not kill a child who was so remorseful. Slad told Nightmare that he had an idea. The hero said that he didn't know if it was even possible, but he believed that everything would work out between them. Slad stated that he came to the dream world to bring back his friends, and now he has no reason to leave Nightmare alone. So this time he would like to see a dream. He told the Nightmare Fairy that her real name was Night Vision, and there was no dream she couldn't make come true. Nightmare, beaming with joy, exclaimed that he was right. There was no dream that she could not make come true, and she understood. Slad responded encouragingly, telling her to believe in herself, that she could do it, and that Nightmare would definitely cope. Nightmare excitedly told Slad that she needed to hear his wish and asked what he wanted. Slad approached Nightmare and asked her to become his partner. This is how the hero ended up on Earth. Slad woke up. Slad was surprised to find himself in the royal chambers, and Nightmare called him. Nightmare asked Slad how he slept. Slad was surprised that she was still like that and asked if that meant it was the same dream. Nightmare replied that no, they were no longer in a dream and everything around them was real. Nightmare happily confirmed that they had managed to do it, just as he had said. He explained that his auto buff worked even on her, and since the auto debuff worked on her, the buff should have worked too. Slad added that he took his analysis and conclusions seriously. Nightmare concluded that the plan was simple. First, they became comrades. She explained that her magical power increased thanks to his skill, and then she managed to control her abilities. The girl explained that the other half depended only on her. Slad apologized and asked why he suddenly fell asleep. Nightmare explained that her power had suddenly exceeded its limit, and she had not been able to control it right away. So Slad fell into a deep sleep, from which it was difficult to get out. Slad, seeing her in the same form despite the fact that they were in the real world, asked her in surprise why. The girl said that she had difficulty transforming the mansion into a new appearance, which she had borrowed from his memories. Nightmare added that now no one would forget reality when they were in a dream, and she could change other people's dreams at will. Slad called it a truly unique species and admired her complete power. The fairy, speaking regretfully of little Aries, explained that she had turned the hero's dream into a nightmare so that he could quickly wake up. Slad asked to wait and asked why he was here if this was reality. The boy had some friends over, so it was best to ask them. She added that she would take a little walk around the area. Slad wondered if it was normal that he had given such power to a monster of a unique species, and that it had not been a very thoughtful act. Slad mentally pulled himself together and told himself to calm down. Ithaca asked him if something had happened. The young man thanked her for the peeled apples, saying that he would eat them later and that he could not get up yet. His companions said that he had been in a coma and that Ares himself had woken up almost immediately. They were very worried. She replied that it was a long story, but the most important thing now was to tell him one piece of news. Disha showed him the scroll and said that after awakening, Ares went to court and reported their departure from the team. The group stood in front of the huge statue, and Disha declared that betraying the hero was tantamount to treason. Having placed the food in front of Slad, the Holy Virgin sat down opposite him and informed him that the hero had filed a lawsuit against those who had saved him from death. Afterwards, Disha asked her friend to listen to what had happened during the month while the guy was sleeping. Slad was surprised at how long he had slept. When they found the unconscious boys, the girls dragged them into the tent. It was raining outside. The witch sat next to Slad and looked sadly at his calm and sleeping face. Ares came up to her. Smiling nastily, he sat down next to the girl and, hugging her, asked how the porter could still sleep so soundly if the reason for the guy's condition was a fake haunted mansion. Rimuri angrily pushed his hand away. She did not understand why a man like Ares would wake up earlier than not a friend. The hero began to get annoyed with the situation. He asked why Slad needed to return to the team at all if he himself had decided to run away. His words were heard by the Holy Virgin. She denied what the hero had said. She said that they had found out that Slad had not run away anywhere, he had been kicked out of the team. The girl looked straight at Adrez and asked if he did not want to explain anything to them. The guy immediately began to defend himself. He reminded them that they should trust him unconditionally. Vor recalled that it was he, their commander, who had fled instead of saving them. These words hurt Ares. The hero started shouting. He reminded them that Slad was a simple and useless porter. It made no difference to him whether he was on the team or not. Shicha said that it was Slad who told them about the enemy's weaknesses on the battlefield. Ares said that he did not care about empty talk when he could defeat the enemy with one blow. Rimuri added that the porter was prepared to protect them with his life. The hero replied that for a useless witch, becoming cannon fodder was a fitting destiny. The girl said that if Slad had not come in time, Ares himself would have been dead. The hero's face dropped. He did not like feeling weak. He approached his team and declared that this was out of place. In any case, the porter was trash in the hero's eyes. The guy pointed a finger at the elf and asked who she was. At first, Ithaca was confused, not knowing what to say, and then leaned over and answered that she was Slad's friend. The hero laughed at what he heard. He found it funny that such a talentless guy had a girlfriend. He grabbed the elf by the chin and smirked, saying that she was being deceived. Ares added that Slad was only good for carrying things. The guy began to examine her body and asked if she did not want to join the team of the incomparable hero Ares. He urged her to listen and admire. The guy said that even though his team members had to be at least A rank, he would allow Ithaca to act as his lover. The elf started crying. Rimuri immediately ran up to her. Through her tears, Ithaca agreed with Slad's words that Ares was a poor man who was in love only with himself. The girls froze. The hero sat down next to the elf and asked what Slad meant. The young man thought it was some word in the elven language. Ithaca did not understand it. Shicha replied that it was the name of a porter whom Ares considered useless and stupid. The hero muttered that he did not know about it. At that moment, Rimuri asked if he knew her name. The guy didn't expect such pressure. The girl screamed that he simply couldn't do it because she noticed that the hero never called her by name. Ares muttered uncertainly that it wasn't true. He thought about it, remembering the witch's name, which he didn't really know. The guy called the girl real, after which everyone was disappointed in the heroes once again. Disha guessed that Ares hadn't even bothered to remember their names. To him, they weren't comrades but service personnel. Their commander dispelled all their doubts with one word. Ares scratched his head awkwardly and said that it was nothing. Shicha interrupted him and informed him that he was now part of Slad's team. He approached the other girls. Rimuri supported this decision. The witch believed that together they would defeat the Demon King. Ares did not expect to lose his entire team in an instant. He asked what was happening to them. Seeing that the girls were not going to back down from their decision, the hero laughed. Smiling nastily, he asked if Slad had kept the girls awake in bed all night, which is why they decided to go over to the side of a simple porter. Ares decided that this was not just sabotage, and added that he did not expect betrayal from the girls. The witch did not listen to this nonsense any longer. She screamed and ran towards the hero. She picked up speed and hit the guy with a wave of her magic. Spinning in the air, the hero fell to the ground. Before he could stand up, Shicha pressed his sword to his face. He seriously told him to stop comparing himself to Slad. The elf looked incredible when he said everything to the hero's face. At this point, the Holy Virgin stopped her story and asked Shicha if he was embarrassed. She suggested that he tell everything himself, but Shicha managed to escape. Disha decided to continue the story. After their conflict, Ares still stayed in their camp because even a person like him needed a place to stay overnight, but he did something during the night. When everyone went to bed, the hero started to pester Etika. The team beat him for it. Disha wanted to start scolding him, but Ares had a different opinion. He believed that he had the right to have night dates with a member of someone other than his team. The girls surrounded him. Shicha suggested that the hero might have become smarter if he had not been a man. Rimuri showed him scissors with her fingers and suggested testing this, adding that it would not affect Aries' abilities. The Holy Virgin noted that the spectacle would not be pleasant, so they should finish before Slad woke up. She asked the girls if they would start the competition already. Before he could figure out what the girls were going to do with him, the team began beating him up one by one. The hero began getting punched in the face. When they were done and the hero was doing something on the ground, Disha praised the girls for their excellent technique. She went to Aries and told him to clench his teeth. The young man realized that the girl was going to use her special blow. The girl replied that she couldn't hear him, so she couldn't understand what he wanted. Confidently approaching the lying and helpless Aries, Disha used her special power to hit the hero, who lost consciousness. The Holy Maiden lifted the hero by his clothes and said that she had no need to use a critical hit, since his death would bring them a lot of trouble. Disha told Aries not to lose consciousness in a hurry because there was still one more willing. It was the witch. She swung and a powerful blow threw the hero into the forest. The team members were shocked by Rimuri's strength. It was her unique skill, unprecedented power. The next morning after the incident in the haunted mansion, Slad did not wake up. Shicha suggested continuing on to the capital. After all, that was their original goal. The team hoped that they could find a way to wake up their friend there. They brought Aries as a criminal. When the hero got out of the carriage, he stopped in front of the castle. The witch and the elf looked at him with disdain and said that they needed to get Slad out of here quickly. Aries told them to be quiet. He was unhappy that the girls, unlike him, were too cheerful. On the way, the team encountered a monster that was affected by miasma. Luckily, only Aries had a hard time in the battle. The girls were sure that Slad's skill was activated automatically while he was sleeping. Arriving in the capital and getting out of the carriage, the team understood that after such an adventure it would fall apart. Etika said that although she was worried about Slade, she doubted that outsiders were allowed into the castle. The elf asked the girl to take care of him. Aries passed by Disha, who was holding the young man on her. She noticed the grin on the hero's face and asked what he was laughing at. Aries waved his hands and reminded that they are heroes, so let's go to the king. The guy threatened that his former team would regret their betrayal. At this point, Disha finished her story. In the end, the boys are accused of treason. Silence fell in the room. Slad was smiling, but inside he was very nervous. The young man did not understand how Or could sleep for a whole month and whether it was really him. The Holy Maiden admitted that she had not expected the king to listen to Aries and hold a trial for them. In the past, Kassav was a brilliant adventurer of high rank. If not for his courage and wisdom, humanity would have been destroyed by the Demon King long ago. It was Kassavu who came up with the idea of creating a hero team to defeat their main enemy. Disha did not understand his decision. The girl doubted that Aries' stupid arguments would be taken into account, but the trial would take place in 3 days. And since Slad had woken up, he had to show up there too. Ethika joined the conversation. She honestly admitted that she knew little about the human world, so she hoped that her friends would not be executed. The Holy Maiden said that she was on the side of the hero's team, but the girl would protect them all. She was going to show everyone Aries' true face. The witch asked if her friend was sure about this, because if she did, Aries would not be able to continue his hero activities. Disha wanted to explain her point of view, but was not interrupted by Slad's serious voice, who said that their comrade would be able to continue being a hero. He added that they didn't need to worry about it. In any case, it wasn't the worst thing that could happen. The young man thought they could end up in a worse situation. Ethika began to worry. She asked what Slad meant. The guy turned to Disha and Rimuri and assumed that they already knew what he was talking about. The young man recalled that Aries was responsible for brawls in city taverns and thefts in the mansions of aristocrats, but due to his status as a hero, he remained unpunished. The witch objected, remembering that Aries had been captured by the guards several times. However, that was the end of their powers. Slad said that the hero had not been sent to prison or to correctional labor since he had always been acquitted. Aries might be stupid, but when it came to self-preservation, he was surprisingly wise. Slad thought the hero knew exactly what he was getting into, so he got a trial. What the porter didn't understand was the king's intentions. If he had simply indulged Aries' wishes, he would have thrown them straight into prison. Instead, he provided them with quite comfortable accommodations in the form of rooms and food. The young man knew he was in no position to judge anyone, so he saw no point in slandering Aries like that. The witch hugged Ethika out of fear. Noticing the elf, Slad asked what she was doing in the royal castle. The girl did not understand the reason for his question. The guy explained that they were called to the castle because of the trial. but he doubted that Ithaca had anything to do with all the fuss with the hero's team. The girl thought for a moment and then told the story. When the soldiers came to their hotel, they said that if she was in their unit, then she should go with them. Slad asked if Rimuri was not with her at the time. He was told that the witch was shopping near the elf. The young man asked if Etika had been asked to appear in court. The elf replied that she had been told to answer any questions that she would be asked in court. Disha grabbed the girl abruptly and said that she would be a witness. The Holy Virgin said that Ithaca could not be near them. Otherwise, they would be accused of conspiring, and then they would not be able to testify. Rimuri defended herself by saying that she had not been stopped by the soldiers. Slad thought about it. Since they were forbidden to communicate with Ithaca, she should be under house arrest. That would be right if the king wanted to hold a fair trial. The young man began to hope that this time the hero would not go unpunished. The day of the trial arrived. The doors of the courtroom opened. The team entered the room. Ares was already standing there. Noticing the traitors, he smiled confidently at them. Slad sighed and stood behind the accused's counter with the girls. The king banged his gavel on the table, calling for attention and silence. He announced the beginning of the hero's trial. The ruler of the kingdom said that they would begin the trial with the plaintiff's claims and asked Ares to come forward. The young man briskly jumped over the table where he had been sitting a minute ago and stood before the judge. Kassav asked if the hero claimed that the witch and the thug had left his team on their own whim, that they had caused Ares great harm. The hero smiled smugly and confirmed this. He wanted to begin his story, but the king's stern voice stopped him. Kassav did not want to listen to anything else. Ares was indignant. He said that he had not finished his story yet. Due to his excited state, the young man forgot about the rules and approached the judge. The king ordered him to step back. The hero had to obey and return to his place. Kassav called the Holy Maiden. He clarified if she was the only one left in Ares's team and asked if she agreed with this statement. The girl confidently replied that she disagreed and that what the hero said was an absolute lie. Ares began to shout and demand that she shut up. If it weren't for the Strala holding him back with spears, the young man would have pounced on Disha. After such inappropriate behavior in the courtroom, Kassav ordered the court mage to use forced silence magic. Afterwards, Ares tried to object, but only coughs and muffled sounds came out of him. The ruler said that only witnesses have the right to speak without permission. He warned the hero that if this happened again before the spell expired, Ares would be forced to leave the courtroom. The hero, realizing that he had no choice but to calm down and give in, gritted his teeth. Kassav asked the maiden what she meant by her statement that Ares was lying. He reminded her that 3 members of the hero's team had abandoned her. The girl asked the king if she could start telling the story in order. She added that the porter Slad was kicked out of the team by Ares himself. Disha explained the situation correctly, while the scans concealed her comrade's skills. The Holy Maiden said that the hero left the witch to be eaten by the wyvern, thus abandoning her in a dangerous situation. Disha explained that Rimuri left because she could not stand his behavior any longer. Kassav said he understood. He asked Slad if he had anything to add. The guy didn't expect to testify in court. He said he had nothing to say. Slad even shuddered from fear. Ares sat opposite him, looking at him with a mad look. He was beside himself with anger. The hero wanted to shout something, but the magic of silence continued to affect him. All this made Slad tense. Kassav banged his gavel on the table and declared that since the testimony of the Holy Virgin coincided with the testimony of the accused, the court would consider the conflict an internal discord. The king added that they would not interfere in this matter, so the accused would be acquitted. Disha was pleased with the result. The boys were surprised that everything was so simple. Ares turned pale. He understood that this time he would be punished. Kassav announced that they would now move on to the question of reducing the hero's powers. At this point, Slad became convinced that the reason that had prompted the king to trial lay elsewhere. At this point, the magicians brought stacks of papers to the judge's desk. Taking one of the documents, the man said that he had received complaints about the hero, but he accepted only those whose content was approved. Complaints that raised doubts or suspicions were excluded. Shicho was amazed that there were so many complaints. Slad realized that it was time to admit his sins to Ares and face the truth. After Kassav announced the move to terminate the hero's powers, Slad noticed that Ares was acting quite calm. However, the young man considered such behavior to be expected because the hero understood that he was the only one who could save the world. He was interested in what the king was going to do next. At this point, Shichu Elfamil was asked to come forward. He flinched in surprise but came forward. A small ladder was placed near the counter especially for him. The judge asked if he had the unique skill Super Memory. The elf felt hot. He was sweating all over. Shicho wanted to say something in defense but eventually confirmed it. Even Slad was surprised by this, because the elf never talked about his abilities. The king said that the hero was the only exception to the rule. He had more freedom of action than the others. The man added that he needed to check if Ares was truly worthy of being a hero. Shicha confirmed that he had heard it with his own ears. Slad, however, considered Cassava's phrase to be hackneyed and therefore did not remember whether the ruler had said it. The young man thought that everyone, including Ares, simply ignored the king's words. The judge continued. He said that the hero had abused his freedom, had failed to fulfill his duties, and had behaved as he pleased. Now Ares' sins could not go unnoticed. Since Shicha had seen all the hero's deeds, Cassav asked to recreate these memories using the court magician's exposure of lies. The elf bowed and replied that he would do anything the king could do. Slad was curious, because he understood that if you combine super memory and debunking lies, you get the most powerful testimony in history. The royal mages raised their aids and activated the skill lie exposure. Cassav told Shicha that he would need to help document Ares' deeds in another room later. Slad was surprised. He thought they would do it now in the courtroom. The guy didn't understand why the judge would use exposure of lies at this point. When the magic had an effect on Shicha, Cassav asked if super memory was his own skill. The world before the elf's eyes swam. He could not lie, so he admitted that this was not his ability. Slad was shocked. The king asked the elf not to be afraid because he was not going to accuse him of a crime. The man asked Shicha how he had acquired this skill. The elf had no choice but to confess. The magic forced him to tell that he stole this skill with the unique ability skill theft. There was a commotion in the courtroom. The king had to raise his hand to calm everyone down and keep quiet. Slad didn't know that he had only a trump card. Now he understood what Cassav had planned. The man thanked the elf for his honesty. He asked if Shicha could take away Ares' hero skill using his ability and give it to another person. Feeling guilty and realizing how good of a skill stealing could be, the elf wanted to explain why he wouldn't want to do it, but was interrupted by Cassav, who only wanted to know if it was possible. He asked Shicha to answer. In the end, the elf answered that he could do it. Cassava had no more questions. He apologized to the elf for making him remember painful moments related to his skill. After that, he let Shicha go. Realizing that they wouldn't be given any more chances, the hero shouted for them to wait. Ares jumped up and ran to the counter. He asked to be given a chance to explain. The forced silence had ended, so the words poured out of the hero without stopping. Previously, Ares was protected by a hero skill, but as it turned out, it could not only be taken away but also transferred to someone else. The guy's only stronghold collapsed into one Mog. The king said that he would have ordered Ares to leave the court immediately anyway, but this time he would listen to the desperate young man. The hero screamed. He promised to change and asked not to deprive him of his status as the defender of peace. The guy screamed and hit the table. His strength left him. He fell to his knees and began to beg. Finally, Cassav began to speak. He believed that a man had 3 chances to start over. Ares believed that this was his chance to convince the king of his decision. The judge asked if the young man thought that this kira of papers looked like 3 sheets. He added that Ares had gone too far. The ruler had given him the best companions, the best conditions, but the hero did not appreciate it. The king was angry at Ares for throwing away all of this and his great powers. The young man quietly asked to be forgiven. However, Kavis said it was too late for apologies. He would never forgive the hero. The man's words seemed to hit Ares. He staggered, sat down on the floor and grabbed his head. He realized that now he could not change anything. The ruler waved his hand. The hero was seized by court magicians on both sides. The king said that he would soon pass sentence, and added that the hero could consider that he would spend the rest of his life in an underground dungeon. Upon hearing this, Ares did not mince words. He cursed everyone and reminded them that he was the one who fought for peace, and the kingdom eventually repaid him with prison. As the guards carried him through the courtroom to the doors, the hero screamed without ceasing. He considered this treatment of himself unfair. Silence fell when Ares was led out of the courtroom. The king sighed wearily. The trial was taking longer than planned. The ruler told the boys that they had a 3-hour break. When the adventurers found themselves in the room, they began to discuss the trial. For them, everything went quickly and easily. Ethics, as a witness, did not participate at all. The witch walked up to Shichai and cheerfully said that he should have used his amazing skill on Ares earlier. Remembering that the elf was not comfortable talking about it, Slad wanted to ask Rimuri to stop, but Shichai beat him to it, saying that he would step aside. Even when the elf left the room, the witch did not understand what she had done wrong. Slad explained that the topic of unique skills is quite delicate. Now the young man realized that their sensitive companion had clearly avoided talking about this topic. The witch muttered that she should apologize to the elf later. At that moment, a voice sounded in Slad's head, asking if they would even have such a chance. He stood up abruptly and said that he would look for Shicha. The girls thought it was useless because they knew that the elf would not accept his support. The guy replied that he knew about it, but he couldn't leave it as it was. He told them to stay where they were and added that he would be back soon. Walking along the corridor, Slad suddenly heard the voice of Nightmare, who was calling the traveler. He immediately ran after her. The girl led him to the trust behind which was Shicha. He was sitting in a room where there was a mess. The elf was sitting next to the bed, unconscious, and there was a suitcase next to him. It seemed like he was in a hurry to pack his things somewhere. Seeing the duffel bag, Slad couldn't believe that their comrade was going to leave without even warning the team. Nightmare appeared next to the hero and said that he should go and get this child before he lost him forever. Slad didn't understand what she wanted to say. Coming closer to Shicha, the young man fell to the floor, losing consciousness. When he came to, the guy saw a large screen in front of him. He was standing in the hall. Slad assumed that he was in the elf's dream. Shicha stood next to him, surprised by his comrade. Slad asked what the elf was doing in this place. The comrade replied that he should ask him about it since he had been here earlier. A family appeared on the screen, sitting at a table and having dinner. Slad asked what it was, to which Shicha sadly and regretfully replied that it was the happiness that he had destroyed. The elf asked his friend to listen, and then he began his story. When he was an adventurer on the old continent, Shichai had the alias of Skill Thief because that was what he did. The guy took away abilities from bad people and helped others with it. Now he thought it was hypocritical to do that again. However, Shicha did not think about the fact that bad people also have families. With his skill of stealing, the elf brought misfortune to innocent people. The elf's mind was filled with memories of one such incident, after which he began to understand what exactly he was doing. Shicha had stolen the super memory skill from that bad man. The young man confessed to Slad that he had never imagined that he would want to end his life. The only thing he wanted was to teach the shameless criminal a lesson. The elf was going to return his skill to him as soon as he realized his mistake. However, it was only after his death that Shicha realized that skills are part of a person and cannot be separated, because they are what is natural to him. The elf knew that taking away abilities was too harsh a punishment, so he vowed to never use skill stealing again. Slad decided that the king had known that Shicha would not be able to use his thief skills. Only now he did not understand why Cassiv had interrogated the elf. The young man assumed that the judge wanted to make Ares believe that the hero's status was not unshakable and could be transferred to any other worthy candidate. Elf said he continued to send money to the family of the deceased. Although the mother could not recover, the children overcame the loss of their father and grew up to be wonderful people who already have their own families. Slad said he understood. The elf was glad that in such a situation his friend did not praise him. Slad thought that in such a broken past which was already finished, there was nothing good for which to praise the elf. Although Shicha knew he was being selfish, he couldn't steal Ares' skill. The hero said it didn't matter to the king. However, as it turned out, the elf already knew that the ruler thought that revealing the existence of skill theft was enough. Slad asked why he was going to leave then. Shicha replied that he didn't want everyone to know about the skill itself. He apologized, but he couldn't help himself. Slad said he understood his feelings and added that Rimuri wanted to apologize. The elf turned away. He smiled after the words about the witch and asked to tell her not to worry about it. Slad stopped him, saying that Shicha himself would talk to Rimuri. The elf wanted to explain that he would not return, but his friend interrupted him and said that he would not allow him to do so. Slad agreed with Shichai's decision not to use his thievery skill, but not with his intention to leave. But he understood that they could not stop the elf if he wanted to leave. But the young man could not let him leave without first hearing Rimuri's apology. Shicha stopped. Slad managed to climb it in the old place. Comrade reminded that the elf eventually ran away from that family, thinking that he could not get their forgiveness. Slad assumed that Shicha kept putting it off, thinking that he would apologize someday, but it was too late and asked if he was right. The young man began to press the elf with his questions about whether he wanted to be forgiven or cursed, or whether he could help his family without saying anything, since that was the easiest way. In the end, Shicha couldn't stand it and agreed with a shout. He added that he would continue to run away on the easy way and remain alone. Tears rolled down the cheeks of the little elf. He leaned over and muttered something about how he would always be alone. Slad didn't think so. He reminded him that Shicha had managed to keep his composure that day. The elf didn't understand what he was talking about. Slad explained. When Rimuri was in danger because of Shichai's plan, he was in despair. Then when the porter himself found the hat, he was calm only thanks to his comrade, although the elf himself blamed himself more than anyone else and wanted to do. The hero approached the thief and stroked his head. He asked him not to run away anymore. It was as if Shichai's eyes had been opened to the situation and he began to see it from a different angle. Slad said that the elf could no longer change the past, but the present was in his hands right now. Shicha turned away from him, cursing. He winked at the young man and noted with a cheerful grin that his friend loved to give such wise advice to everyone, and always hit the mark. The screen lit up brightly. The dream was ending. Slad replied that it was very easy and added that Shicha should simply apologize for rarely leaving the room. From the facial expression he had observed, it was clear that the elf would do just that. When they returned back to their consciousness, the adventurers returned to the girls. The elf explained and told them everything. He asked for forgiveness and bowed his head. Rimuri approached Shicha and admitted that she was upset. If he had abandoned them so quietly, she would not have been able to return to life. The elf wanted to apologize again, but he didn't have time because the witch suddenly attacked him. Shicha fell on the bed together with the girl, who was hugging him tightly. She also asked for forgiveness for saying hurtful things to him. Slad was pleased. However, he did not see Ithaca, who was standing behind him and crying. She did not want to disturb the guys, but the emotions did not overwhelm, and the elf also rushed to hug, because of which everyone fell on the bed. An informer knocked on their door. She came with news of today's court hearing, but when she saw the boys and girls lying on the bed, she awkwardly excused herself and left. Slad wanted to stop her, but he couldn't. At the end of the day and the trial, the heroes left the castle. Today's meeting was mainly devoted to the disclosure of Ares' crimes. Also, the harassment of ethics was witnessed. In general, everything went smoothly, which the guys did not expect. However, Slad was never able to clear up the misunderstanding when they were caught in bed. The guy could not get to the moment when he would return home and rest. But the king had other plans for the hero Ares' last command. The guards approached them. They informed him that they had been ordered to escort them by the ruler's order. Slad realized that he would not be able to rest today. When they arrived at the hall where the king was waiting for them, the team saw Disha talking to Kassiv. The girl was happy to see her comrades. Everyone approached the ruler and showed incomprehension as to why he had called so many people to him, despite the fact that the man was unaccompanied. Kassiv had a thoughtful look. He asked them not to worry about his safety. Kassiv added that if they all attacked him at once, the boys would not have a single chance. The king stood up and released his power as proof of his words. The atmosphere in the room changed immediately. The girls and Shicha became nervous. Kassiv turned to Slad. He asked if he had told his comrades about his true abilities except Ares. Kassiv suddenly appeared behind the young man and, hugging him, with a satisfied smile, noted that this guy was quite dangerous. The girls did not understand why he was saying this. Slad was indignant. It sounded like he was a shady guy. The king replied that he was indeed rather strange, but that was not the point. The king wanted to clear up the misunderstanding. He said the boy had a powerful skill. The man added that the girls could stop talking to him formally, so he ordered the guards to leave. Shicha asked to wait a little. Etika felt relieved that she did not have to fly to speak formally because the international language was difficult for her. Remen noted that Kassiv was a fairly friendly person. The Holy Virgin did not agree with him. She said that people like them had no right to neglect politeness during a conversation with His Majesty. The man sighed. He asked the young man if Disha was always so serious. The boy replied that she was indeed a very businesslike person. The girl grabbed him and patted him on the head, telling him to look at himself. She added that one should not address the king so impudently. Kassiv thoughtfully asked if he had to observe all this etiquette even when he was receiving his old friend. He wanted to continue talking about the church ministers, but the girls interrupted him. As it turned out, they didn't know that Slad and the king had once been teammates. Everyone screamed in surprise. The young man had already begun to get used to their violent reactions. The rulers laughed. He said that he was just a former adventurer who had suddenly become a king. The man advised them to simply go along with it if an elder extended his hand. He added that if the youth did not want to, then he would not drink anymore either. Disha wanted to ask His Majesty to stop talking to them so familiarly, but Rimuri stopped her. Adjusting her hat, she said that the king himself had given them permission. The girls sat down at the table, opened the dishes, and choked on their saliva. The food was simply magnificent. Ethics too tried a piece of slada, and he agreed that the food was delicious. The Holy Virgin screamed in panic that the ruler should start the meal first. Kassiv agreed with her and suggested a banquet. He ordered everyone to drink and be merry. Everyone raised their cups of drinks and clinked them. When the king sat down at the table, he cheerfully noted that it was not easy to deal with all sorts of legal proceedings. Besides, the hero's case had so many different circumstances. Slad said that everything went well, but he would like to know the ruler's reasons. The man realized that the youth still couldn't see the full picture. He agreed to have a frank talk with them. The king asked them what they really thought about their former commander. The girls said that he was pure evil, useless trash, and they had no trust in such a person. Kassav said that this was the main reason why it was necessary to hold a trial. Since childhood, the young man was a notorious dictator and was behind every skirt. Just when it was revealed at the coming-of-age ceremony that he had the skill of a hero, there was a premonition that this was the birth of the worst savior in history. However, it is undeniable that Ares is a hero. First of all, there is a precedent of a hero defeating all of the Demon King's predecessors. It was a thing of the past, but the fact remained. Everyone began to believe in the legend preached by the clergy. The elite of the second continent were of the same opinion. The king's compatriots, with whom he had gone through hell, called on him to surrender and continue to simply burn his relatives who had turned into evil spirits. Then His Majesty opened her mouth, but he could not utter a word. He had no choice but to let Ares be a hero, regardless of his personal opinion of him. Slad began to understand why his old friend had gathered them all here. The man said it was a big decision. As he had told the court, he was proud of the people he had assembled into this team. Although everything was fine at first, but trying to gain military achievements and confidently followed the wrong path. He undoubtedly considered himself the strongest hero, not even suspecting that it was all thanks to the porter. Kassav suggested that perhaps inviting the young man to the hero's team was not the best idea. The witch protested. Disha and Shicha also disagreed with this assumption. The Holy Maiden said that if it weren't for the guy, the hero's team would have fallen apart even faster. The king remarked that his old friend was as popular as ever with women. He sarcastically replied that he was certainly more popular than His Majesty. The elf cried out emotionally that everything would be fine with them as long as Slad was next to them. The man asked cheerfully if a little half-elf was about to be born. The witch remarked that it seemed like bad treatment. The Holy Virgin added that if the two of them planned to get married, she would grant them her blessing. Such conversations did not embarrass the young man. It seemed that he himself was not against a quiet, peaceful life in the elven thicket. The girl wife opposite blushed and said that the conversation had gone in the wrong direction. Shicha said that he knew one good dwarf builder. Afterwards, the king continued to talk about forming a team. He said that because Ares did not want to work with men, he mostly picked girls, and among the guys, he only agreed to Slad as a porter. The witch jumped up and said she was a volunteer. Kassav said her enthusiasm made her an ideal candidate, but more importantly, her excellent skill. The girl asked if he meant her unseen power. The king said she was right. He admitted that he would be sad if Ares abused his comrades, so he sought those who were able to resist him. Disha asked if this was true for her too. It was true, but there was more to it than that. The temple had always had strict requirements, so the king chose her first. Shicha began to guess why he was accepted into the team, and he was clearly not happy with it. He asked if he was chosen only because the dwarves were strong in battle. Kassav said that the hero had a specific hobby, lollikin. Slad thought that his old friend was counting on skill theft when he chose the elf, but even so, his insurance worked. Afterwards, the king heard about their zeal and thought that everything turned out for the best by pure chance. On the other hand, however, the number of complaints grew along with their enthusiasm. The man said that the team was already aware of the Steel One. Ares' decision to fire the universally acclaimed porter turned into a disaster in an instant. The king sighed and said that it was a sudden end for the hero and his team. The girls were silent. They had nothing to add. Kassav stood up abruptly and asked what they thought about Ares being able to defeat a monster of a unique species. The man agreed that it was quite a difficult task. He took another bottle of alcohol and sat back down. Pouring a drink into his glass, the king continued speaking. His plan to let the hero defeat the Demon King had ended in failure. After forming a team, the servants of the hero faction were becoming frustrated because Ares was causing too much trouble. Even the royal family members were furious. The elite had read all the complaint reports. As expected, they wanted to punish the hero, so they pounced on the counter plan that His Majesty had been thinking about from the very beginning. The Holy Maiden asked what the plan was. The man replied that he was going to set a course to achieve peaceful coexistence with the Demon King in order to save the common people. Disha screamed that it was impossible. The witch agreed with her. She would not be able to accept such a thing. The king shook his head, saying that this was the reality. There was no guarantee that the sacred power would be able to defeat their enemy this time either. The servants only talked about how this skill helped defeat the previous demon lord, which was not a unique monster. Moreover, the monster waged a large-scale war, having an entire army of evil spirits under its command. Therefore, His Majesty did not intend to kill him. The plan was to win the battle with the army and conclude a peace treaty with the instigator of the war. Talk of everything ending with the hero fighting the Demon King was childish fairy tales. The holy cause could not believe that their goal was meaningless from the very beginning. The girl was clearly unhappy. She asked why they had created the heroes team back then. Disha jumped up from the table. She knew that the king had no other choice. But if he initially thought it was useless, then the girl did not understand what they were all fighting for. She didn't care what the people said or what the believers chatted about. She didn't care if he was a hero at all. She thought it would have been better if the king had simply ignored him. At that moment, Kavis exchanged glances with Slad. He said that his old friend was the reason for this. When the man learned that the young man was on this continent, the thought flashed through his mind that perhaps this would be within the power of the one who had defeated the fourth unique monster, the Dragon Empress, 10 years ago. The girls didn't expect to hear this. The thief knew about it. Etika said that the guy told her before he met the Nightmare Fairy. Disha and Ramelli grabbed Slad and demanded an explanation as to why they didn't know about it. The young man said that his comrades fought hard and were ready to say goodbye to life more than once, and then won. However, this was not enough for the girls. Slad added that he just needed to be present on the battlefield for support. Hearing this, the man called him a madman. It was obvious that Ares was deluded about his powers and because of a simple porter. The king had a plan. He thought that the hero could defeat the demon king by continuing to feed on these illusions. Because of this, Kavis felt guilty towards her old friend. He stood up and asked for forgiveness for his irresponsibility. He was very sorry. Slad said he didn't need to feel sorry because circumstances were different. He knew the men had done everything they had to. The young man added that what was more important was that he would not have met the boys and his future loyal team if it had not been for His Majesty's plan. Kassiv still felt guilty. He wanted to apologize because his heart was uneasy. In any case, thanks to the trial, they managed to strengthen their relationship with the priests and the royal family of the old continent. Now they could officially strip Ares of his hero title. It was time for the guy to answer for all the crimes he had committed. There was no need to make a fuss about this matter by publicly taking away his skill. The king looked at the elf with regret and admitted that he had treated him badly at the trial, asking about his skills. Although Shitcha agreed with Kassiv, he understood that he had to move forward gradually. The young man admitted that she did not quite agree with his plan for a peace treaty. However, when Shitcha saw the embodiment of legends with his own eyes, it seemed to him that making a fairy tale really was not such an impossible dream. The elf mentally apologized to the real owner of the super memory skill and asked if he could use this power again. Shitcha said that he would take over Ares' skill. Slad was standing on the balcony when Etika came out to him. She was looking for him and finally found him. The guy immediately noticed that his girlfriend had been drinking heavily and asked if she was okay. The girl waved him off, saying that she was okay. After some time, Ithaca asked if it was the right decision that they made together with the king. The young man admitted that he was not sure how right this decision was, although he understood that Ares was the one who was hoped to save the world, not destroy it. Slad said that he convinced Kassiva to let him read all the complaints they saw at the trial. And then he learned that too many people had suffered because of the hero. Ares never deigned to apologize to them. And yet, despite the hero's obvious indifference and disrespect, the world was forced to accept him only because he was their salvation and protection. This was the reason why he was not sent to prison or to the mines. Slad considered Ares arrogant, selfish, and ungrateful. He had a hard time thanking anyone. Women were just a tool for him to satisfy his needs. He didn't care about humanity in general. Soon he would be stripped of his hero title. Ithaca noticed that her friend, as always, was looking out for everyone, even a man like Ares. The young man asked her not to worry. He promised that he would never forgive the former hero. Slad knew that Ares never apologized to his comrades or to anyone at all. The only thing the porter remembered was the hero's constant swearing and blaming everyone around him for his failures. This was how Slad knew Ares. He thanked Ithaca. The girl did not understand why her friend did this. She did nothing. Slad explained that she helped him decide. She asked what for. The guy smiled and said that it was too early for him to retire. He decided to continue being an adventurer. Slad extended his hand to the elf and asked if she wanted to join him. The girl got a little worried. Ithaca admitted that before meeting him, she knew nothing about the outside world. Although they had not known the young man for long, he had not taught her much, and the elf believed that the guy would still teach her a lot. Ithaca said that she was lucky to meet such a sincere and kind person as Slad, so she agreed to continue traveling with him. She offered her hand and asked him to take care of her. After talking with the elf, the young man returned to his room. He was sleeping when Disha knocked on his door. Opening the door, Slad asked why the girl was not sleeping at such a late hour. The Holy Virgin was only in her nightgown, which the young man did not expect to see. He blushed and invited her to his place. Slad prepared tea and they sat down at the table. The girl was silent for a while. She leaned over sharply and asked her friend for forgiveness. Slad was taken aback by such suddenness. At the same time, he did not understand what the Holy Virgin was apologizing for. She began to lament that it was her fault. Disha trembled. She covered her face with her hands. The girl did not understand how she had come up with the idea that she would be able to control a monster in the form of Ares. Slad immediately realized that she had read the complaints written about the hero. Disha said furiously that there was no place for someone like Ares among the living. She believed that she should have killed him with her own hands, then not so many people would have suffered. The holy maiden was upset to tears. Slad admitted that he himself was not aware of how successful the hero was doing things. He added that even Shicha was in the dark, and Disha could not know everything. However, this did not dissuade the girl. She believed that although the others could not know this, she should have guessed about the hero's antics. The temple protected Ares from punishment. It could not turn away from the young man when it had glorified him for so long and so diligently. The hero's skill was a gift from the gods, bestowed upon the monster, which meant their deity had made a mistake. Slad knew that no church would want its god to be able to make mistakes. The girl was sure that it was the temple that hid the villain Ares. She believed that the skills were involved in this too. Hearing this, Slad began to get nervous. He knew that the temple had always been radical. There was one organization that was willing to do anything to prove the superiority of the gods. If they were really involved in this, then the young man now understood why they could not notice the hero's antics. Even Slad himself once had to resort to their services. Disha continued to reproach herself for her inattention. Despite her role in the temple, which had access to its central power, she did not notice these manipulations. As a saint, she was blinded only by her task to lead the hero and defeat the demonic plaque. Slad noted that Ares wasn't her only responsibility. He blamed himself too. Although they were comrades with the hero, they barely spoke to each other. The young man believed that he had given up too early and stopped trying to establish communication with him. In addition, Slad could ask Shicha to keep an eye on the hero. Even Remeni turned a blind eye to Ares' antics to achieve her goal. And Shicha was unable to strip the hero of his ability due to his guilt over his past mistake. The entire team was to blame for what happened. Disha asked how this could be. Slad knew that no matter how hard he tried, his words would not be able to save the holy maiden from remorse. The young man placed his hand on the girl's shoulder and assured her that he would always be there to support her. He bowed his head and reminded her that this was his unique skill. The girl looked straight at the guy. Small tears were running down her cheeks. Slad told her not to worry so much. She grabbed the boy's hand sharply and pressed it to her chest. The Holy Virgin swore that she would definitely carry out reforms in the temple. The girl persistently asked her friend to believe her. Disha pressed Slad to the sofa. He said that he believed her. Disha promised that she would never let him down. The guy never doubted his friend. The young man mentally noted that the Holy Virgin always tried so hard and conveyed her thoughts quite directly. Although she often threatened to hit him hard, she never seriously hit him. At that moment, Slada broke out in a cold sweat. He realized that he had never seen how powerful her blow could be. The girl said that she found what the guy video in a dream. It was not her own desire, her path, which she chose herself. Slad was happy with such news. The scars Ares left on this world were deep, but the boys were determined to take responsibility for his sins upon themselves. Although the hero Slad was found innocent at the trial, he will now live with this burden. A new adventure of the adventurer began. Slad walked through the market. He collected products according to the list. He still had to get some slug jam and ingredients for an apple pie. When Slad looked up from the list, he noticed the noise around him. He noticed that the townspeople were gathered around something they were actively discussing. The young man approached one of the men and asked what was going on. He was told that they were transporting a hero who had been found guilty in court and put in a cage. The guards shouted at Ares and asked him to calm down. The prisoner shouted that the sentence was unfair and that they had no right to treat him like that because he was a hero. Ares looked angrily at the crowd, in which he saw Slad, the culprit of his torment. The hero went mad. He began to scream, pointing at the young man. Hatred gave Ares strength. He broke free from the guards and rushed towards Slad, saying that he would kill him. The adventurer did not move from his place. The hero grabbed Slad by his clothes. He shouted that the porter was to blame for everything. A wave of blows crashed down on Slad. While Ares was venting his anger on the porter, he stood as if nothing was happening. The hero screamed that he and his former crew had sold out their commander. Another blow hit Slad. The air vibrated. One apple fell from the paper bag Slad was holding. Suddenly, everything became clear to him. He began to remember everything that was connected with Ares. The young man remembered how he was told that he was looking after everyone, even the hero, whom none of the team was going to forgive. Slad accepted that Ares had long since become anything but a comrade to him. Magic surrounded Slad. Ares' fingers snapped in an instant. He screamed in pain. He fell to the ground and began to writhe. The porter was surprised that the hero was still under the automatic buff. Slad leaned towards his former comrade. He said so that the hero would hear him clearly. Slad said goodbye to Ares for the last time and left. The townspeople surrounded them. The hero screamed. At that moment, soldiers ran up to him. The commander was outraged that no one was controlling the prisoner who could harm civilians. The order was given to seize Ares. As he left, Slad heard the young man cursing everyone. He yelled at the soldiers to stay out of his way and promised to kill them all. The porter wondered if the automatic debuff had worn off because his target had changed. Slad noticed that Ares was now attacking not only him, but everyone indiscriminately. He was no longer a hero, but a monster. Arriving back at the mansion, he was met by the team and a richly laid table. The first to greet him was Ithaca. Rimuri asked what the noise was just now outside. Shicha, eating a pie, muttered that they were already tired of waiting for a comrade. Disha said that they remembered that Slad wanted to try apple pie, so they prepared food especially for him. Seeing that the elf had already started eating the pie, the maiden told him to stop. Etika hugged Slad and asked him not to be so cold, because this was their long-awaited meeting in 2 weeks. She invited her friend to the table. Disha supported the elf's words. Shicha suggested having a drink instead of grumbling at each other. The team began to eat. While the girls ate and talked, Slad watched them. Disha had recently returned to the temple and started training with the monks. The young man assumed that the priests were probably telling her that this was not permissible for a holy maiden, but despite this, she chose her path. Rimuri was invited to the royal palace, where she began making potions for the frontline warriors. The girl was happy that she had the opportunity to not only fight monsters, but also to resist discrimination against half-breeds. Shicha started working for Kashua, doing some dirty spy work. He had a huge debt on his shoulders from the skill theft incident, so now he was providing various services to the king for free. Nightmare had been cutting up in the capital lately, giving sweet dreams to children. Only at night she constantly came to Slad's dreams. Perhaps the fairy had chosen them as her new abode. The former hero was given the death sentence, which was quite expected, considering the number of crimes he had committed and the severity of some of them. Ares no longer had the hero skill. Shicha had taken it away, and Disha was tasked with guarding him. In essence, the hero's team fell apart as each member began to live their own lives. The hero was no longer there. The next day, Slad went out into the forest. Gathering the necessary plants into a basket, the young man was quite tired. He sighed, wiping the sweat from his forehead. Ithaca suddenly approached him, asking if he had enough grass. The guy walked away from her in embarrassment, and the girl, not understanding her friend's behavior, asked what happened. Dark clouds began to cover the sun. Ithaca froze as if she sensed something was wrong. She looked up and then decided to run to the top, which opened up a view of the castle. The girl, with a tremor in her voice, told Slad that something was wrong with the sky above the city. The young man also began to feel the tension in the air. The elf screamed that the capital was surrounded by enemies. Whole crowds of zombies and skeletons began to climb the fence towards the defenseless citizens. They climbed up until they reached the top. The heroes did not understand how the monsters could get through the sacred barrier that was supposed to contain them and protect the city. Ithaca screamed that they should go, but Slad stopped her. He understood that although skeletons and zombies were weak monsters, there were too many of them. The city was surrounded by not hundreds but thousands of monsters. The boy decided that they would entrust the advance of the undead to Kashiwu. At that moment, the heroes noticed that a huge shadow had descended upon them. Looking up, they saw a dragon with a rider who rushed straight to the capital. The flying monster landed near the heroes. The dragon's master noticed Slad and recognized him as the same porter from Ares' team. He greeted him and introduced himself as the commander of the squad of deceased souls of the Demon King's army, Zelhar II. Slad understood that he was standing before a rather important person in the demon army. Now it became clear to him how the undead had managed to overcome the city's barrier. With the spell of the departed souls, the situation had changed dramatically. The young man had shielded Ithaca from danger with his body. Slad thought about how monsters were capable of many things under the influence of the forbidden skill. He realized that the summoning was done near the capital, so no one noticed the approach of the undead. The only thing worse than the monsters themselves was the magic caster himself, who could command such a huge army. The power of a ranked squad leader of the Demon King's army appeared before them. Ithaca asked Zelhar why he led the undead army to the capital. The demon admitted that he came to the aid of Lord Ares to save him from execution. The heroes tensed at this news. The commander said that the prisoner interested their lord with his arrogant human character, sinister soul, which even evil spirits avoid, and monstrous fighting power. The demons felt that making Lord Ares a hero was a waste. He was much more suited to being one of the King of Monsters' army. Slad mentally agreed with Zelhar. Ares' soul was so black that if he had not been a hero, he would have certainly become one of the leaders of the Dark Army. The commander said he was a scout. He added that if they still hoped for salvation, they had better get rid of him, even though there was no point in that. Seeing how many undead Zelhar had brought with him, Slad knew they were at a disadvantage. If he had been alone, he could have somehow dealt with the help of an automatic debuff, but Ithaca was nearby. There was no way the hero could distract such an army with a provocative skill maneuver. Throwing stones at the demon was also useless. Slad needed to do something urgently, otherwise his girlfriend would be in danger. The young man shouted at Ithaca to leave him and run away. However, the elf had already decided everything. Bright stars appeared in the sky. They fell to the ground, creating an explosion that illuminated everything around. A spirit emerged from it which embodied the power of ethics. The girl took a fighting stance. She told the demon that Ares had committed too many atrocities, so he would not go unpunished. The girl screamed and everything around shook. The hero was surprised by this power and shouted, asking what was happening. The girl said that Sylph blew away the undead from their path. The hero shouted, saying that it was incredible, and asked when she managed to become so strong. She answered that she and the guys went on missions for a whole month while he was away. Sylph replied that of course she had become stronger, and the hero looked at her in surprise. She added that they would talk later and ordered Slad to light a fire. They were surprised by her decision, and she asked them to trust her and hurry. The hero was glad that he had taken the enchanted flint with him. When he lit the fire, he asked if it would be enough, and the girl answered that it was. The villain was surprised, saying that the elven maiden had surprised him, but there was no point in it. He said that if they hadn't noticed yet, he owned the Soul Conqueror. The hero heard about such ability for the first time and thought about one idea. The man said that as they could already guess, it is a unique skill with it. He can summon and control many times more dead people than a regular soul caster. He added that it was a shame that they were weak in themselves, but he could do things differently. He summoned a huge monster from 1,000 small ones. He said that the golem of the dead was ready for battle, and asked if he could blow away such a giant with the wind. He shouted, wielding his staff and telling the golem to crush them into a pancake. The hero tried to contain this enormous force. Seeing this power, the hero realized that it was the spirit of the fire of the salamanders, and ordered to stop. The hero was shocked that she summoned another spirit and Sylph did not disappear, and the girl said that it was because she had mastered multiple summoning. The hero finally realized how long he had been gone. The hero turned around to see that the golem of the dead had turned into a pile of ashes. But it was not over yet. The villain laughed contentedly, saying that fire was the weakness of the undead, but in this case it was useless. He shouted that everything was useless as long as he had the soul master skill and they could not win. He shouted for the golem of the dead to rise, and the monster appeared again. A huge monster loomed over the boys, and the hero did not understand what was happening. The girl next to him was also surprised that he had actually revived. The man said that in general, the Master of Souls is able to endlessly summon an army of the dead. He said that in the end he could revive the golem as much as he wanted. The hero thought that this was too much. The girl screamed, saying that they would simply burn him clean. Her spirit used its power again. The huge undead burned and regenerated again. The villain shouted that it was useless, repeating it many times and laughing. The girl came up with something that could help. She ran towards where the bow lay. The girl decided to remove the one who controlled him and aimed an arrow towards him in the sky. The arrow flew past the villain, and he said that it was dangerous. He realized that it was not for nothing that he had taken the arrow charm with him just in case. The arrow charm magically does not let through material projectiles. Physical attacks will not pass through, so the hero dreamed that Rimuri was in this place with her long-range magic. The hero asked the girl if she could put a debuff on him. First, they need his attacks to be aimed directly at him. Zelhar too does not order the golem to attack them like any undead. It simply hates living beings, so it attacks of its own free will. The hero said that if you let the golem attack you, the skill might work. There is no point in it at all. And even if you temporarily defeat the golem, Zelhar too will be able to simply summon other undead. The girl understood him and said that he would have to be content with her power. He apologized, saying that if only his debuff was not automatic and he could use it at will, then everything would be different now. Du stood next to him, saying that he shouldn't apologize, everything will be fine, she just needs to try a little harder. He asked if she had a plan. A huge blow was aimed straight at the boys. The girl directed her power towards the enemy, saying that she was his opponent. The girl was already suffocating while Zelhar too was calm. The hero thought that his mana really wasn't running out at all. He wasn't even out of breath. Could it be that he wasn't reviving the golem of the dead but was summoning new zombies which were forming into him? He couldn't be infinitely powerful. It suddenly dawned on the hero that if the Soul Master skill was capable of endlessly summoning undead, then why hadn't he done it yet? The girl in front of him began to fall, apologizing to Slad, saying that she could hardly hear the voice of the spirits anymore. He said that even so she was very amazing. She told Slad that he was much more amazing, and she was just a beginner who uses the power of spirits without having her own. The spirits were able to fight the Demon King's mighty army because he was with her. The hero asked what she was talking about, and she asked him to just listen, and asked him to understand that his comrades were amazing only because of him. She told him to be proud of his strength, and she had already played her role, so she asked him to finish the scene. Zelhar laughed seeing that the girl had reached her limit, and said that apparently the hero was now in despair. He shouted for the hero not to worry, because right now, with his kindness, he would lead them both into the afterlife. The hero said that the afterlife is the second name of the fifth monster of the unique type of the Lord of the Dead. The hero realized that Zelhar too is just a liar. Zelhara too gave in only one small detail: if the army is infinite, then he should be able to summon much more undead at the same time and accordingly recreate much more golems of the deceased. But why does he then drag out the battle? The thought suggests itself that his abilities to summon and control are actually not unlimited. And his ability is the Master of Souls. By the word souls they mean incorporeal evil spirits like ghosts or phantoms, but Zelhar only summons zombies and skeletons. Unique skills are given exclusive names corresponding to the principles of their work, so another name would be more logical, but why exactly this one? The second is about excessive performance. The skill of recreating undead consumes the same amount of stamina as the Soul Master's control of the dead. It is strange that despite this, Zelhar still does not show symptoms of mana deficiency. The skill does not consume his magical powers, and there is only one conclusion. Zelhar shouted that right at that moment he would, with all his kindness, escort them both to the afterlife. The hero said that the afterlife is the second name of the fifth monster of the unique type of the Lord of the Dead. Zelhar replied that the hero is well aware of this. Usually only the spellcasters of the dead themselves know this, and they, the spellcasters of the dead souls, worship him. At this point the hero realized that Zelhar too was simply a liar. The hero said that his inexhaustible supply of recreated undead was just like that of the Lord of the Dead. It couldn't be that some ward of the 16th Demon King could compete with the afterlife. Zelhar asked what he had just said, and replied that even if he had lied a little about his abilities, the fact remained that the hero was finished. He ordered the golem of the dead to crush the hero. The golem struck the place where the hero stood. Zelhar too joyfully shouted that the simple porter decided to play the hero, but it would have been better to continue running. Something in the golem crunched. It turned out that the hero was holding his blow. Slad held all the power with one hand. With one blow, he caused the golem to scatter into thousands of undead in different directions. Zelhar too stood surprised by what he saw now. He screamed asking what it was. The hero asked him what happened. He can summon as many undead as he wants. The hero shouted at him to act. The villain gritted his teeth, finding himself in a bad situation. Zelhar raised his staff, commanding the undead to come. But his power didn't work. The hero said that apparently they don't rise, and he calls them to himself with the help of the staff. Well, in general, what else is left? Because the Master of Souls can extract magical power from the dead only at a certain distance. This skill allows the caster to control corpses by transferring deceased souls into them. When the bodies are defeated, the ghosts return to the Master, thereby restoring his magical powers. He asked Zelhar if he said it right. Probably when Sylph blew away the undead he didn't show it, but he got excited. He added that it was all because the possessed dead had become too far away and he could not replenish his entire supply of strength. But having the ability to increase his fighting power, he called for reinforcements from the capital, and to prevent this from happening again, he made the monster larger. The hero said that the souls of the golem defeated by the wind returned to him, because he did not fly too far. If everything continued like this, he would have trampled them without much effort, but ethics called the salamander, and so the battle dragged on. The hero knew that the limit of his army was 30,000. This is the maximum possible increase in magical powers with the help of the artifact. Thus he extracts souls from the slain dead, restores mana, and revives the undead with the help of the skill of the Master of Souls. This is the secret of his fake limitless power. Zelhar too was amazed by the hero's analytical abilities, and said that he could not be an ordinary porter for who he was. The hero was introduced to everyone as a simple porter, or an ordinary unemployed person. He shouted to the enemy that he was Slad, who had overthrown the Dragon Empress Tiamat 10 years ago, an SSS-ranked adventurer. Zelhar too laughed, asking what kind of nonsense this was, clearly not believing the hero's words. He said that it could not be that such as he defeated the parent of the Demon King. The hero was surprised. He did not know that the current demon lord was born of the Dragon Empress. Zelhar told him to stop the army that had arrived. Its number exceeds thousands of weeks. The hero does not think that it would be better for him to take the elf and not run away. The hero reminded him of what he had said a minute ago. He recalled Zelhar's order to the golem to crush the porter. Zelhar did not understand why the hero was saying this. He suddenly screamed. His dragon fell to the ground and he did not understand what happened. The hero said that he probably ran out of strength, and Zelhar needed to quickly recall all his warriors from the walls of the capital to restore him. Zelhar did not understand what the hero had in mind. Behind him, everything was exploding, and the enemy did not understand what was happening to his limitless army. The hero said that he thought that even ethics noticed that his forces were not limitless, but decided to take the risk. The girl made a premature move by calling for backup. Sylph is able to transmit sounds through spiritual wind magic. With her first cry, she transmitted a message to her comrades. Each has its own role. Ithaca put Shichin's words into practice, and what came out of it Zelhar can see with his own eyes. Two girls rushed forward. Zelhar too saw the witch and the holy maiden from the hero's team moving towards them and did not understand when they became so strong. The hero replied that they simply used to obey the hero, or rather Ares, who did not allow them to develop their potential. Zelhar decided that now he could at least kill the hero and ran at him, but he didn't succeed. His staff was stolen by a noble thief. The girl said that it was forbidden, but it could be sold to the guild as research material and was indignant that she came across such a poor man. All the enemy's undead fell down dead and he screamed, not understanding what was happening, because this staff obeys only the spellcasters of the departed souls. The girl replied that she was simply a noble thief. Although there were limitations to the use of the stolen item, the skill ignored the operating conditions of most artifacts. In short, the unlimited army was no longer in his power. The guy screamed as attacks from the air flew at him. Finally, the enemy was defeated. The hero was surprised. He fell saying that they had miraculously managed. The thief said that his date had been quite difficult. He replied that collecting medicinal herbs was no joke to her and realized that Shich had been hiding on the sidelines all this time and had not intervened in the fight before. He did not understand how he could help in such a situation. The hero said that he could steal the Master of Souls. Shich asked if the hero was joking. Unique abilities cannot be obtained by stealing skills. In general, it was not in his competence. The girls ran to them asking Slad and Etika if they were okay. One of them was happy to see that Etika apparently just had a mana deficit. The hero thanked Disha for answering the call. The girl replied that he was speaking as if this victory had come easy to him. He replied that it was indeed so, because if he had stood as a pillar the debuff would not have affected all the undead. He had to try and provoke them. The witch looked at the demon lying to the side. She approached him, examining him carefully. Still alive, Zelhar too asked what some half-breed wanted from him. The girl asked if she knew a demon named Karnd. The demon looked at her carefully. He smiled, answering that it was the first time he heard it, and the girl said that then she didn't need anything from him. Zelhar called her a half-breed who dared to look down on her. He was interested in what she was doing on the side of those who despised demons and asked how about granting a quick death. Disha replied that she didn't want to and looked at her friends on the side. The demon was laughing. He said that she was not stupid to kill him because it was pointless. The demon king was still able to revive the fallen. The girl screamed in surprise and asked if he could really resurrect the dead. Michai replied that the demon was lying like he was breathing and he should admit defeat. Zelhar said that they might think that they wanted it even better, and the Lord had inherited the ability to dominate life from his mother. He said that he was the commander of a squad of deceased souls, and not some pawn, so he would surely be resurrected, and when that happened he would come for their souls. One of the girls trembled at the mere thought that if the demon king really could resurrect. Disha said that then he could resurrect his mother too, but the thief doubted, asking if such a thing could really be possible. Michai said that there are no artifacts with such properties, and if this is true then now the one who treats life carelessly gains dominion over it, and things are bad. Everyone froze, maintaining silence. The hero finally said that the demon had not lied. The demon king could resurrect the fallen, but he doubted that Zelhar would be honored. The castle of the dragon demon Lord Ushamgar. He menacingly asked if Zelhara too had really been killed. He was told that it seemed so. The king did not understand how he could lose. Ushamgara summoned Zelhar too as the commander of the squad of the deceased, counting on his unique skill. The servant asked the Lord what he planned to do, and he replied that he planned to bring him back to life, of course. The king believed that such skills were worth their weight in gold, and used the skill to order Zelhar too to rise up. But Zelhar never appeared before them. The Lord did not understand what it was, and his servant asked what had happened. The Lord said that the commander was not reviving and asked the servant why he was not answering his call. He panicked, saying that he also didn't know it couldn't be that Mr. Zelhar II refused to return. The Lord shouted that his orders were unconditional and they were not subject to someone's will. The servant said that they had no other explanation and the Lord killed him. The king screamed, not understanding what had gone wrong. Numerous corpses lay around in blood. The servant stood again, aware of where he had just been. The Lord confirmed by saying that he had just been revived by him and asked where his gratitude was. The servant fell to his knees, saying how grateful he was and humbly thanked him. The king said that there was no reason to doubt his strength, so why did Zelhar II not respond? The servant asked if he could clarify something that would help determine the reason. The king ordered him to deal with it. The servant asked if the great power of the ruler could resurrect absolutely anything. The king was angry, but asked if he would be able to understand the reason if he answered him. The servant said it was possible, but it wasn't certain. The king said there were 3 types of beings that he couldn't resurrect with the power he inherited from his mother. The king could not resurrect rare species, and those he had never met in person. He added that he could not resurrect those whose lives were taken by old age. The servant assumed that Zelhara II was then killed, taking away his years of life. The Lord asked if anyone was capable of such a thing, and the servant replied that such a unique skill was quite possible. The king realized that this really sounded reasonable and much more logical than saying that Zelhara II was going against his orders. The servant was happy, saying that this was certainly true and now the Lord's problem was solved. But the king killed him again. The servant was resurrected again, and the king said that he had just allowed himself to doubt his strength, and for this he would be awarded 10,000 deaths. He started killing him, counting. When the count finally reached 10,000, the king decided to end it and ordered him to rise. He said that it was time to return to pressing problems. Meeting with the hero as he wanted did not work out. For the Lord it was a problem, and it was necessary to find another way because that guy was worth it. He asked the service what he thought. He was no longer in the best shape, saying that he was completely right and that was how it was. His speech was no longer good and he could barely speak. The king didn't like this and killed him again 10,001 times. He began to count again. Calming down, he called the commander-in-chief of the Black Raven to him and he quickly arrived. He ordered him to catch the hero Ares alive and asked if he could handle it. The Black Raven said that he would certainly cope, since this was the order of the ruler. Meanwhile, in another place, the man scratched his beard, saying that the resurrection of the dead, if it is true, is too much of a problem. He asked Slad if those who had spent their life years were really not subject to resurrection. The hero replied that if it was about the skill received from the Dragon Empress, then it was true. 10 years ago, monsters who died from the effect of accelerated aging due to his debuff were unable to rise again. The Dragon Empress army consisted of the most powerful warriors. They all continued to resurrect over and over again. But then Slad's skill changed the course of the battle. The man said that no matter how much victory in battles is meaningless if the enemy's military forces are not reduced, so they need to change tactics. Slad said that at least their enemy uses the ability less randomly than the Dragon Empress and only resurrects 1 or 2 at a time. The thief said that resurrection is a very mysterious skill. If the Demon King wanted Ares so much, wouldn't it have been easier to wait until he died from execution? The girls agreed that something didn't add up, and it should be assumed that resurrection of the deceased has limitations. They decided to put off the issue of restrictions for now, because now it was more important to resolve the situation with Ares. Maybe they would actually resurrect him after they executed him. The man agreed that they couldn't kill him so recklessly. The girl asked if it mattered at all, because he no longer had the hero skill anyway. Michai said that in any case he fits perfectly into the army of the Demon Rabbit. But Disha said that Ares is a complete weakling. Without Slad he will end up in the army and then he will understand that he cannot do anything. Everyone agreed with her. Slad said that if anything happened, they could use a debuff on him. The man interrupted him, saying that he didn't have to become an executioner. The king decided that for now they had no choice but to delay his execution. He smiled, thanking the guys for helping him out once again, and promised to reward them sometime later for their hard work. Michai then said that he was taking his leave. The saint also had to return to the temple and Disha had work to do. The hero hesitated. He was asked what happened. The hero thought that parting was not the end of the world, but for some reason he felt so lonely. Nothing like that happened when Ares kicked him out of the team. Then he easily resigned himself to their ignorance of his skills. It felt like they didn't see the real him, but now everything is different. He is the eagle of those who are ready to walk hand in hand with him. Now he has real friends and wants to experience exciting adventures with them again. He said he has a proposal. He asked if they would like to team up again. In the morning, the hero woke up and having dressed began to brew himself some coffee, yawning. There was a huge, delicious breakfast on the table in front of them. The hero read the newspapers, where it was said that the pseudo-hero was in his last days and that 2 months had already passed since Ares was sentenced. The hero choked on his coffee and the girl next to him asked what happened. Slad shouted that they had recreated the team, but for 2 months they hadn't gone on a single normal mission, and he wanted it so much, but in the end he began to degrade. At first he followed his principles, but in the end he greedily took advantage of the rank privileges. They have not just a house, but a whole mansion, not only ordinary food but also desserts. He accepted the king's words that he had already saved the whole world once and they clouded his mind. Before he could blink, he merged with the flow of carelessness and also dragged it along with him, ate the additives to such a state that she did not realize the scale of the catastrophe. The girl agreed that they had almost no adventures, but everything was wonderful anyway and showed him a new cute suit. The hero realized that the refined life is not something to accustom new adventurers to. Slad shouted that in any case how can one own all the benefits of SSS rank and only take buildings for collecting herbs and humiliating goblins. Ithaca agreed with me, she was also already tired of this. He asked her to tell him what she thought about this. She said that she thought it would be better to rely on his opinion. He realized that Tika had become like a hopeless child who was unable to make decisions on her own. He suggested that she get down to real work today. Etika approached the boys and told them to look at the new task. Michai decided that it was another assignment to destroy goblins and said that he would not go today. Rimuri said that she could help if it was necessary to collect herbs, but she did not want to go to the goblins. Ethics laughed, saying that they had something interesting today. Looking at the building, the thief did not believe that there was such a reward for killing 30 beasts and said that it smelled of something dubious. The girl told him to look below, where it was said that adventurers would be raised from E to D rank. The main reward for the assignment is the opportunity to increase the rank. The girl shouted that if she succeeded, D rank would be hers. The thief understood what attracted her so much. Rimuri was not against it, because Ithaca still had E rank and why not take on assignments for him to raise his rank. The thief also decided that this was not bad. The hero was happy that Ithaca was not indifferent to her adventurer rank. The hero asked the witch if she could make more potions this time. All the boys started to rejoice, and the hero realized how tired they were of those errands with the goblins. The hero said that he would go and call Disha and let them get ready in the meantime. Some time later, 2 men were fighting with swords. The brunette was unable to repel the attack and fell. The crowd was told that Eska from Ranoa village had won. The crowd roared. The hero, passing by, saw that the selection of a new hero had already begun. After Ares lost his title, people started arriving from all over the world who considered themselves worthy of the title of the new hero. And it seems that this whole idea with the selection is not to Disha's liking. Someone showed up from the outside. This one turned out to be Disha. Seeing her, the hero greeted her. Seeing that she was going to the laundry, he offered his help and she agreed. Helping her with the laundry, he asked why the Holy Virgin was doing the laundry. Wasn't that the job of the younger students? The girl said that everything was fine and she decided to do it herself. He asked why she wasn't watching today's hero selection. Disha replied that she saw no point in watching it this way. They would not find a suitable candidate soon. This selection was carried out only because of the belief in the power of the legendary hero of the old continent. Just a test of the body. But the girl believed that one cannot become a hero simply by following one's ambitions. One becomes one by doing everything possible for the well-being of the world. And people who only want a hero title simply won't pass the selection. The hero thought it was harsh, although it couldn't be otherwise because of Ares. The girl asked what brought him to her, and he showed her that Ithaca was taking on a task. For this reason, Disha said that she would help. He thanked her and asked how she worked in the temple. She said that as he saw it, she had nothing to do. The priest did almost everything, and a wounded person who needed the help of the Holy Virgin would definitely not come to them, a surprisingly simple position. In general, she believed that the guys would find it more useful, and that she might even meet people along the way who would be suitable for the hero's place. The hero, seeing what was happening outside the window, understood her. After a while, they entered the building and Disha was surprised to see the girl and asked what she was doing here. She laughed, saying that all this was due to her hard work and ideal qualities for service personnel. Seeing the hero, she climbed over the counter. The saint shouted at Slad to run because this woman was dangerous. She, finding herself near the hero, said that they had not seen each other for a long time and asked how he was and if everything was okay with him. The hero didn't understand who she was, and she said that she had once made him a passionate proposal. But the guy still didn't understand. It finally dawned on him that she was talking about that very marriage statement. The girl introduced herself as Selenia and apologized for not introducing herself last time. He asked what she was doing in the Capital Guild, and she told him that she heard that he was staying in the capital, but she could not let him go under any circumstances. She asked him not to be rude because she had worked tirelessly to improve sales results and had received a position in this branch. He told Selenia that her love, or rather her tenacity, was amazing, but there was one thing. But he fell silent, realizing that everyone had seen it. Michai talked about how interesting their relationship was. Rumuri heard about the marriage and asked if they were going to get married. Disha thought he was having an affair on the side when he had ethics and her fists itched. The hero said that he doesn't have any affairs, but in general he doesn't date Etika either. Finally, the hero said that Mrs. Selenia was the one who took care of him when he was kicked out of the group and nothing else connected them, and that this girl was making something up for herself. The thief said that it was obvious. The hero wondered why he was beaten then. Selenia told the hero that he was boring, but so be it. This time she forgives him. And she forgave because she wanted to be a good wife for her future husband. She quickly ran away, leaving everyone in shock. Selenia told Ithaka that she had decided to raise her rank with an orc-killing mission. Vor said that she said that as if it was something strange. Selenia replied that nothing of the sort because, firstly, she is a professional and selects tasks strictly according to people's capabilities, and secondly, she would not consider giving a group led by Mr. Slad such a terrible assignment. The guy asked her to stop. The boy asked the others when he became the leader of the group. Mitch asked who if not him. The hero had never been a leader before and did not know if he could handle it. They looked at the task, where they were asked to kill 30 orc scouts approaching the Hydra Mountains. They noticed that it was a building from the royal army itself. It was necessary to kill orc scouts from the army of the Demon King. The payment is piecework. It is necessary to simply kill a limited number of monsters, and it is naturally more solid than from the task from my guild. Well, and of course it will help them to increase the rank. It is necessary to find the orc camp and kill them. The hero calculated that for killing one orc they give 180 gold and on top of that another 150 for completing the task. It turns out to be unusually profitable. The thief said that no matter how many such tasks they took, nothing good awaited them in the end, like they killed a hobgoblin, but he was equal in threat to the orc and they did not really earn anything. The girl chuckled, saying that if they didn't want to, then it wasn't necessary. The other group had already set off to find the camp. Mitch cried out, surprised that as many people as they wanted could take part in this task. Selenia said that if the other group managed to get rid of the required number of orcs faster, then Ithaka would miss the chance to increase her rank. Shichai tried to get them to give him more reward, but there was no point since someone else had already taken on the task. Eventually, another group of adventurers would simply come along to do the same task for the reward that had already been set. Shichai said that they were cheapskates, not the royal army. The hero finally realized that it was not for nothing that killing orcs was considered a mandatory condition for rank increase. The royal army deliberately made it so that as many adventurers as possible decided to participate in this task. From these very warriors, in fact, another army would arise. The thief said that, as expected from the hero, he immediately saw the true intentions. The girl said that she had only recently arrived in the capital and had no idea what he was talking about. The hero realized that she was lying and did not blush. In any case, she recommended that they take part in this task if they wanted to increase their rank and asked if they agreed. The hero still agreed and she almost put the seal. Shichik hiccuped to make her stand up and asked what the reward was for killing mutants and rare species of monsters. Selenia said that they pay for all work equally. The thief said that in that case such monsters should simply be avoided. Well then, he is sure that some D-rank group will definitely cope with an orc giant or an orc tyrant. The girl asked to wait a second and said that adventurers should help each other and show the right example to the younger generation. Shichai answered that she was right, however. First of all, adventurers should take care of themselves. The group itself decides whether to participate in the battle or not. He asked if they really had no right to refuse. The hero understood what he was talking about. If adventurers found colleagues who were in trouble, then out of the kindness of their hearts they could help, but no one would want to do it as a duty unless they were paid. Because for adventurers it was first and foremost a job. Shichai said that he absolutely does not care about others. Slad, while still in the heroes group, he learned one very important rule: never interfere in Shichai's negotiations. Even Ares followed this rule in his time. Shichai added that Slad was an SSS-ranked adventurer, and such a respected person should be paid accordingly. The girl gave in and said that if they killed particularly strong monsters, she would somehow come to an agreement with the guildmaster. Shichai was glad that they came to an agreement. Disha was worried about getting rid of the extra monster on the way, but he and Rimuri had nothing to do since Shichai was so important. They finally went. The thief was pleased that they would now receive additional payment for the monster that they would have to kill anyway. The hero reminded him of his words that he didn't care about others. Shichai said that he didn't care, but the hero would get into a fight anyway, and then he wouldn't be able to stay on the sidelines. He cried out that in any case there was no time to waste, and that the orcs had to be killed quickly, and now they recognized their Shichu. The carriage moved forward. Rimuri asked Ithaca what she was doing. She replied that she was smearing herself with a potion that eliminated the smell lately. She had started using it before every mission. The witch thought it was ordinary perfume. She came closer to smell it. Rimuri said that she really doesn't smell, however, she is too dependent on it. Ithaca said that she didn't want the smell of goblins and other monsters to remain on her skin, so the shopkeeper recommended this potion to her, especially since she wants to smell good in front of Slad. Slad said that even if she stank, he wouldn't say a word to her. She screamed that she didn't want him to even think about it anyway. Rimuri said sarcastically that the hero was the epitome of delicacy. The witch said that Ithaca would have a hard time if she married him. The hero, changing the subject, said that they were going for the first time with only 5 people and asked if they would need to take another vanguard with them. The witch said that Ithaca could summon gnomes, so there shouldn't be any problems. Well, in general, Slad is quite capable of standing alone in the vanguard position, so it will be on him. The hero was shocked, and the girl said that they had already discussed everything and made a decision while he was sleeping. He did not understand why they decided everything for him. Ithaca said that the enemy in front of him would immediately weaken, and it would become easier for everyone to fight. Rimuri said that Disha did not know about this yet. The hero said that he had only gone into close combat against goblins. The girl said that everything was fine and they would somehow get out of it. Disha was riding ahead and noticed that someone was waiting for them behind the rocks. The thief decided that they were bandits. Disha said that her demon detection was not reacting and she did not feel the miasma. The girls supported him, saying that this was his finest hour. Rimuri said that as soon as the bandits appeared, she would shoot an arrow at them, and he could consider it a tactical training. The hero thought that there was nothing more scary than being on the side of the bandits, and that Sylph aimed at, he was just an ordinary person and he couldn't do it. Disha approached them and asked if they really wanted to let Slad into close combat. It was too dangerous. The hero hugged the saint in gratitude. Etika said that once Slad was targeted, a fully automatic buff would activate. Rimuri added that if he wasn't in melee combat, nothing would activate right away. Shichai said that they wouldn't abandon him anyway, so everything would be fine. Disha realized that their idea of weakening the enemy right away made sense. They waited to convince him that everything was fine, they would fight with him, and they would definitely protect him if anything happened, and training before meeting a strong monster would only be beneficial. At that moment, the hero really wanted Rimuri to be in his place. The hero still agreed to try. Disha said that if anything she would heal his wounds, but he still needed to be injured minimally, so she would cast a protective spell on him. The hero thought she was his mother. He thought that only Disha was kind to him and set himself up that everything would be fine. He asked Nightmare if she was there, and she jumped out saying that this was their common adventure. Then he decided that he should tell the others about her, but she asked him not to do it. She said that if they found out that there was one of the 16 pillars among them, they would start to get nervous, and she couldn't allow that. By the time they no longer had his opponents, they were already ready to go into battle. The thief told Rimuri that the first strike was hers, and she used Scorching Mist. Burning Mist is a magic that creates a slightly burning mist that is used to detect enemies. However, none of the Basilisk gang can be fooled by such a pathetic trick. The men started screaming that everything was burning and they couldn't breathe. They ran forward. The hero thought that Rimuri's spells were still merciless. Due to the automatic buff, Rimuri's burning fog became so powerful that the enemy could hardly breathe in it. The thief said that he and Slad would fight those who tried to cross the bridge, and the rest should attack those who tried to escape. Ethics began to exercise its powers. The bandits moved into battle wanting a fight. The thief said he would win first and asked the hero to back him up. They ran across the bridge and 2 bandits were about to hit Shichai. He dodged it easily and the bandits were left without their weapons. Shichai smiled and showed them the click and asked if this was what they were looking for. Another bandit attacked the hero, asking why he was walking around without armor. He must understand that he was making himself too easy a target. Thanks to the fully automatic debuff, the power of any enemy attack becomes 0. They were unable to wound the hero, but he was still very scared and wanted to escape from there as quickly as possible. The bandit attacked again, shouting from above that he would definitely not miss this time. The blade appeared in front of the hero's face, but when he struck, his blade broke and flew off. The hero realized that this was no longer the effect of his debuff, but of the holy armor that Disha had cast on him at first. He grabbed the bandit. Slad activated the general skill and used a throw. He realized that the vanguard was not for him after all. He thought he would die of fear. In the end, only one leader remained, and he was asked if he wanted to continue this senseless fight. The man was surprised that his men had already lost and simply fell down, saying that he couldn't do it anymore. The thief told the referee to use the finishing blow, and she used a forced sleep spell. The man fell. Ethics was glad that they had already dealt with everyone, but the saint noticed something. Slad was lying on the ground, shaking, and they asked him if he was serious. It was still unclear who had defeated whom. She had never thought that he would be so exhausted from one fight. He told her not to look at him with such pity. Ethics reassured him, saying that at least he could defeat goblins with a flick of the wrist, but that didn't console him one bit. They finally realized that putting Slad in the vanguard was a bad idea. His physical skills are pretty mediocre. He can only stand in the vanguard thanks to a fully automatic buff. The tactic makes sense against stupid goblins, but not against humans. The witch apologized to him, saying that she shouldn't have forced him. He said not to blame himself because he himself thought he could handle it. She said that despite this, he is still her hero. He was still sad, but these words made him feel a little better. Etika asked what they would do with the bandits. Shichai said that they would take the leader with them and take him to the nearest city, but the rest should be taken by the road guards. Etika didn't understand why, and Shichai said that the highest reward is usually assigned for the leader. Disha said that they still won't be able to take everyone. If the guards arrive, they will be hanged or sent to cleanse their sins in the mine. But if the monsters turn out to be faster than the guards, then such is the will of God, and they will answer for their actions with blood. She can only help by using consecration or washing their bodies with holy water, so that after death they do not turn into undead if they are eaten by monsters. Ithaca realized that they would die anyway. The leader shouted at Ithaca that she didn't feel sorry for leaving them to be eaten by monsters. It was already too much, and suggested that they part in peace. He promised that they would not attack anyone anymore, just let him untie them. The thief asked Ramiria to help. She used the word of truth spell. Shichai asked the leader what he would do if they untied him. The bandit shouted that he would continue to rob and kill, which was the coolest thing in their world. The thief asked if Ithaca had heard this. They would not become model citizens. They would not go to the temple to atone for their sins and take a knight's vow, because these guys are like Ares. They see fun in robbery and violence. When Ithaca heard about Ares, she immediately stopped feeling pity, and the guys were grateful to Ares for helping them now in some way. They looked at the mountains, wondering if the orcs came from there. Ramuri answered that they came from the north of the mountains, to be more precise, and that is where the lands of the orcs and demons are. Etika asked what kind of lands the demons were. They said that up until the Great War 50 years ago, this territory belonged to them, but His Majesty Cassiv recaptured these possessions. Ithaca was surprised that he could do more than just pit. It turns out that this entire territory is the border of the kingdom of Saywood. The mountains were famous for the difficulty of the terrain, so an army could not be sent there, and the killing of orcs and other undead was done by adventurers. She asked why in that case they did not close the mountain roads, thereby protecting the orcs. They told her that it would work as a temporary measure, but there was a high risk that the orcs would simply start digging tunnels, which would cause even more destruction. The orcs weren't very smart. They would see the barrier and go through it, regardless of whether they needed to get to the other side. They told Shichai to look for signs of the orcs for now, and the others would rest. Shichai led everyone forward, saying that the orcs were too stupid to cover their tracks. Finding them would not be difficult, and immediately discovered the orc camp ahead. They noticed that there were about 10 individuals and there were no mutants among them. Ramuri offered to fry them with her magic, but the hero reminded them that they came so that Ithaca could raise her rank. Ithaca took the hint and said that she could handle them herself. The hero told her to deal with at least the majority and be careful. The girl said that she planned to burn them with salamander fire, but since there was no way she would use Sylphia's bow. Disha cast holy armor on her just in case, and Ramuri cast a magic title. Ithaca thanked them. The girls liked her gratitude so much that they began to offer many more buffs for her. Disha wanted to strengthen her defense even more, and the witch to use all the strengthening spells. The hero sitting on top asked if this was too much for a fight with ordinary orcs. The thief grinned and asked what it was. Shichai said that he saw a familiar smile on his face, the same one he had during his time working with Ares, when the hero took care of the others. Shicha said that he now understands how the hero felt then. Due to the influence of the past, Shicha kept his distance from everyone not so long ago. The hero was glad to hear this. The boys set up a tent and Ithaca fell asleep. The hero said that this was good, because she had spent a lot of energy fighting the orcs. Seeing the hero's strange face, the witch asked what was wrong with him. He wondered if ethics could hypothetically have been strong from the very beginning. The saint asked him why he had such thoughts, because Ithaca hadn't even fought goblins, she was still a newbie. The witch agreed that she had indeed shown herself to be better than usual in the last battle. She hit every orc in the head or heart without fail, but all thanks to his fully automatic buff, isn't that right? The hero thought. He said that Ares had also received a boost from him, but Ithaca had done a much better job than him now, and the former hero also had a holy sword. The saint said that if you think about it, he was right. Slad said that a long time ago he was in a party with a couple of E-rank adventurers, and they were also affected by the buff, although it wasn't that strong, at least until he leveled up. The saint said that even if that was the case, isn't it good that ethics is so strong? Slad said that it was good and he was happy for her, but the witch saw that something was wrong with his face. He said that Ithaca can't feel her power because of him, as she became an adventurer and immediately joined him, so she believes that she achieved everything only thanks to his buff. He was sad that she couldn't feel what she was capable of. The witch said that he and Ithaca both didn't realize how strong they were. The hero agreed that ethics is indeed strong, but he is strong only due to skill. The hero said that it had already gotten cold, so he would go and get more firewood. And he left. Suddenly the witch screamed, and the saint asked what had happened. She told everyone to listen to her carefully because she wanted to discuss something. The boys didn't like it because they were eating. Remuri said that the reason she gathered them is because she wants to share with them a brilliant plan. She called her plan Slad's hero plan. Everyone was shocked, and the thief asked if she understood everything about Slad's skill. He shouted that because of his unique skill, he was even kicked out of the squad once. What kind of hero is he, and they still haven't found a job because of it. Disha said that on their continent they called him the invincible unemployed man, and Ithaca said that Slad doesn't have the skills to be a hero. The witch said that they were wrong. Remuri said that he didn't need any hero skills, it was enough for him to act like a real hero. Slad didn't understand what she was saying, and the hero said that she was hinting to him to use his buff more often, but he couldn't do it all the time. The witch said that she had been thinking all along about how Slad should behave so that he would be considered a hero, and asked if it was possible to come up with a way to use the buff effect on Slad himself and cancel the skill penalty. She thought to come up with an elixir that would help solve this problem. They realized that the witch's love was too heavy. She saw that they did not share her point of view. Remuri said that for magicians, adventure is essentially an eternal search for answers to such things. No matter how hard they try and no matter how many times they fail, they will not stop. That's how magicians are. The boys thought that this is what her mother taught her. It's scary. Remuri said that when she found out Ares' true identity, she was very disappointed. But the witch didn't want to give up and thought a lot. She took great pleasure in concocting a potion that would make him lose all interest in the opposite sex. The thief said that the witch could be quite a sadist. But unfortunately, since Ares was considered a hero, he had mental stability. The witch approached Shicha and said that she wanted to ask him for forgiveness, but he did not understand why. He didn't know what she was planning, but he asked for mercy. She turned away and said that she was distracted and asked to be allowed to continue. She said that the buff's boost effect increases with leveling up, but as Slad said, there are many nuances, so she revised the concept of the plan itself. If it is impossible to activate the buff in advance, you just need to become stronger. All you need to do is transfer her enormous power to him. Finally, the thief understood that she asked for forgiveness. She apologized and said she had no one else to turn to. He said he didn't care as much as he used to, especially since he owed her. Ithaca still didn't understand what they were talking about. Shicha said that Ares always asked to use his thief skill, which allows you to steal and turn skills into candy, and if Slad eats a candy, he can learn her skill. The witch apologized, saying that she knew how much she hated using this skill, but she asked to steal her enormous power. Shicha said that since she knows, she should give in. But she shouted that she is a magician and she does not need this skill, she does not even use it, but it will be useful to Slad. She was sure that he would use it for good and for its intended purpose, and that it would be of much more use to him than to her. Shicha nevertheless agreed and said that they could try, and in any case he would be able to return it back if necessary. He began. Shicha walked through the witch. He appeared behind her holding a small ball in his hands. The girl slowly came to her senses. The hero ran up to her when she fell. Shicha showed them her skill that he stole. The hero thought that you won't see how Shicha will steal your skill. The thief asked Remuri if she had this skill from birth because of this. In order to live a normal life, her body needed to learn to control it. Most of the muscles in her body simply cannot function without this skill. In other words, without skill she won't be able to move normally. But the girl still wanted to give it to the lad and showed that she can stand on her own. Disha didn't want to upset her, but she said that if it weren't for Slad's buff, she wouldn't have been able to lift a finger. The girl didn't understand, but the thief had already explained this to Ethics, that skills cannot be considered separately from their owner. Even though the witch thought she didn't need the skill, her body was telling her otherwise. So he told her to take it back and shoved it into her mouth. A little later, from the side they told Shicha that he did a great job on guard duty. The thief asked why the hero had come, since it was still early before the changing of the guard. The hero replied that he wanted to check on him. He said that Rimuri had already apologized for bringing up old wounds, and that he was truly okay now. The guy was more worried about Rimuri, because she asked him to do this only because of Slad, but she had already encountered skill theft. She should have realized that by raising the topic of this she would risk sowing discord in the group. In short, helping him was much more important to Rimuri than their entire group, although perhaps she herself did not realize it. The hero did not believe in this and believed that the witch valued them all equally, and their group was one of the few places where she, a half-breed, could feel at home. Shicha asked if the hero remembered how Rimuri joined the hero's group. At first she was drawn to Ares, but his mask of kindness did not last a week. The hero remembered how, after she learned the whole truth about Ares, he supported her every day, but the desire to help him become stronger before he was just a good-natured porter for her. But after the hero saved her from the demons, she changed her mind and was sincerely grateful to him. Shicha agreed that their relationship definitely improved when Rimuri learned the truth about his skill, and even her eyes lit up. She was happy when she learned that the one she looked up to was not just a kind porter, but an adventurer of the SSS rank. At that moment, Rimuri said something to him. She said that she wanted Slad to become a hero and called him an unemployed hero inside. He didn't understand what she meant then, so he ignored it. Among them, it was Rimuri who admired this hero the most. The thief added that in any case, they had better keep an eye on Rimuri, because she clearly had no intention of giving up her plan. Shicha said goodbye to the hero, saying that he was going to sleep. Slad was surprised that in Rimuri's eyes he was a hero. They may be comrades, but there's still a lot he doesn't know about them. The Ares incident has strengthened the bond between them, but they still have a long way to go in learning about each other. The next day, Disha said that there were 6 monsters infected with miasma ahead, and the thief ran to check. Ithaca said that she thought Shicha was really cool. He didn't understand what she and the saint said, asking unexpectedly why she wouldn't say it to his face, although she admits that stealing skills seemed like an incredible ability to her. It's hard to disagree with that. Ethics was surprised that he was not only able to steal the skills of others, but also give them to others or even take them for himself. Disha found this incredible, but something surprised her even more. After yesterday, she was convinced that Shicha could defeat anyone if he wanted to. Rimuri and Ithaca didn't really believe her words, saying that she was exaggerating a bit, and then Esfayata offered them an example. She asked Ithaca what would happen if Shicha stole her spiritual priestess skill now. The girls screamed that Shicha would never do that, and Disha said that they just had to assume. But Ithaca didn't want to even imagine it. They wouldn't be able to remain friends, and not only that. Disha said that the skill of a spiritual priestess allows you to communicate with other spirits. And that means that Ithaca will lose everything like Slad. Slad understood that this was a common reasoning, but for some reason it hurt him to hear it. Disha added that all of her class skills, including summoning spirit, ethics will lose similarly to her holy power or witch quality. Adventurers, like demons, draw their strength from class skills gained during their journey or completing forbidden missions. The saint said that the quality of a witch will allow Shicha to use all types of magic. But there is nothing to take from Sad, because unique skills cannot be stolen, and he does not have a class, as well as class skills accordingly. The hero cried out that he could use provocation or throw, and that could also be stolen, but the witch reminded him that these were general skills that Shicha already had. For some reason, the hero felt like an outcast. Shicha finally returned. The girls immediately swarmed around him, starting to compliment him and say how much they loved him. The guy shouted that they were too close and he had a bad feeling. The saint said that, thank God, Shicha was a good man and he would not use his gift to harm his loved ones. The guy asked if he could finally report what he saw and said that there were 6 individuals ahead and all of them were high orcs. The saint said that who would have thought that they would enter the lands of the kingdom. She asked if Shicha had seen the royal army, and he answered that only their equipment and nothing more. Ethics was surprised that they were so strong, and the witch said that the high orcs are a type of demon. Most people mistakenly call them mutated orcs, but physiologically they are demons, not ordinary monsters. Ordinary orcs have divisions into types of work, but high orcs are all considered fighters. The hero said that they should be feared precisely for their class skills. Ithaca said that in that case they should definitely be more careful. The thief told her not to worry because they do not know about their existence, so it is possible to catch them by surprise. Disha said that victory will not be easy to achieve, but they have advantages in their hands. The witch reminded Ithaca that she once cornered Zurhani, so she can handle this too. Ithaca calmed down, remembering that she had indeed fought the demon before. A little later, she used acceleration. She summoned a fireball, striking the enemies with it. The boys watching the battle realized that it seemed like they didn't need their help. Ithaca was happy, saying that Shitcha seemed right because it was easy. Disha said that without Ares, it became much easier to deal with the monsters, and she thought that it was all thanks to Ithaca. The hero replied that Ares was enjoying the idea of delivering the final blow, which is why Rimuri couldn't use her powerful spells. The saint said that now, if needed, additional protection could always be provided by calling the gnomes or putting Slad at the forefront. But he was against it. The enemies didn't even have time to do anything with the help of permissive magic. They simply weren't given a chance. All that's left is to stop the remaining orcs from escaping. Sylph's strategy of using wind to power up the fireball is very effective, and their team is so powerful thanks to all of them. Ithaca said that she finally realized that Slad is essentially their local strategist. Rimuri supported her, saying that Slad always came up with great tactics. The girls hugged, happy that they understood each other. The saint also thought that it was Slad who had come up with the tactic of using Ares as bait. Rimuri was surprised, as she thought Disha had come up with this idea. The hero explained that Ares had rejected all of his ideas, so he had asked Disha to come up with this strategy for him. This tactic was in keeping with his reckless ideas, which he could only use thanks to Disha's sacred armor. Rimuri said that in essence Slad was the power broker controlling Ares from behind the scenes. The hero responded that without knowing the context, it felt like he was some kind of villain. The girl hugged him and he said that it wasn't just his strategy, but the orcs themselves probably weren't that strong. The thief said that the hero was wrong about this, and the orcs were very strong. With the help of the assessment, he found out that their weapons and armor were of first-class quality, plus they had items with them that increased magic resistance. Rimuri was surprised, and Shichai said that they were elite fighters from the Lord's army, and he also found a written order from the Demon Lord. They got into it for the sake of increasing their ethics rank, but in the end they found something truly important. The thief said that they were very strong. With the help of the appraisal, he found out that their weapons and armor were of first-class quality, even made of mithril. The saint thought that somehow this was not like Shichu. Usually when he finds something valuable, he shouts at the top of his lungs that they will sell it and get money, but now he would be very quiet. Shicha said that he also found a written order from the Demon Lord. The saint rushed to him asking if he was joking, but he was not joking, saying that it seemed that the Lord had given some secret assignment to these high orcs. This means that based on the contents, they will be able to track the movements of the Demon Lord's army, and as a result, receive clues that will lead them to the Demon Lord himself. Later in the city, the worker asked again could there have been one high orc there and the other 6 ordinary ones. The hero thought, is she really that scared to believe it? Also the guy's hotel some things to sell, and the witch with a spell summoned things to the building. There was equipment of the high orcs, all of it from the light material of mithril, so it will not be difficult to carry. The magic that Rimuri used was called hypercompression. It made objects smaller for ease of carrying without changing their weight, which perfectly matched the unprecedented power. Hearing about the mithril, the worker became embarrassed and said that they were going to the district near the capital. Then what were they doing near the mountains of Idra? Her concern is justified. A group of CE ranks went to the mountains from where demons come to them, and not simple ones, but in special equipment. If there were less prepared adventurers in their place, they would have died there. Shicha whispered to the girl that in addition to the equipment, they found an order from the Lord of Demons himself. The girl gathered her thoughts. Ethics told them not to think that they had forgotten about the bonus for fighting strong monsters. The worker calmly agreed. The hero expected that this would shock her, but she was surprisingly calm. The girl said that the guildmaster was not there at the moment and asked if they would be okay with receiving the reward tomorrow. The thief sighed, saying that he thought so. He had guessed from the beginning that Selena wanted to introduce them to the guildmaster. Ithaca asked if it wasn't in their best interest to get an extra reward. The thief replied that it was what they needed to meet with the guildmaster to discuss the size of the reward. But Selena had already sought to introduce him to the guildmaster before that. He said that at least their interests were not in conflict. Ithaca said that it appeared that Selena had deceived them, but Shichai said no, because he had managed to obtain a generous reward for them. He told Ithaca to remember that the art of negotiation is in finding mutual benefit, and dictating one's own terms is a sign of unprofessionalism. Selene said that as an apology she would treat them to dinner and ask them to rest well and enjoy the food after the hard journey. Ithaca shouted at Selene to move away from the hero, and she replied that she had nothing to worry about. Everyone drank to the increase in the level of ethics. Disha asked Shichai how many mugs in a row he had already drunk, and the witch made a remark to him that he drank like an old alcoholic. Shichai asked Rimuri who drank such sweet stuff as she did, and she replied that it was Olzwale, a very strong drink. The saint said that they should not pour any more and saw that Ithaca was already feeling ill too. She tried to say that she was fine, but she wasn't. The saint turned to the hero, asking why he didn't follow ethics. He didn't understand what he had to do with it. Wine from a luxury hotel is fine, but nothing compares to drinking around comrades. The hero didn't think he'd ever be able to just drink in a tavern like a regular adventurer again. The thief said that in any case, they were getting closer to their goal. The witch asked if his goal was to raise Ithaca's rank, and he called her stupid. He planned to make the entire group S rank. The saint said that if he wanted to take any orders, then a rank would be enough. But the thief replied that by becoming an S-rank group, they would get rid of all the bureaucratic details. They will not be slaves to current circumstances and will be able to do only what they want with all their souls. Someone apologized to them, and the man asked the hero if he was by any chance Sir Slad. The hero confirmed that it was him, and he had some strange feeling. The man, smiling, said that he was not mistaken and that it was luck for him. The hero honored the darkness, that this man literally exuded it, and even the darkness could not compare to this all-consuming darkness, as if the piercing gaze of a raven looked into the soul. The man told the hero that he brought him simply wonderful news. The hero said that he and his group were currently celebrating their rank increase and asked if they could discuss it later. The man was surprised because he knew that the hero was already SSS rank. Slad explained that it was not about him, but about his comrades. The man doubted and said that this group did not deserve the honor of being called his comrades because he needed allies who could go to the top with him shoulder to shoulder. The hero was angry that he said such a thing without even introducing himself, insulting his comrades so much. The hero was angry at his impudence. The man asked really, and the hero does not remember him, and introduced himself as Weiss, the leader of the clan of Pyrrha Triumph known as the Black Raven. He asked if the hero remembered him. A clan is a union of several groups of adventurers. They distribute orders from the guild among themselves and take joint missions that are available only to clan members. It is not an official but tolerated form of organization by the guild. The hero replied that it was the first time he heard his name. Weiss was confused that the hero did not know him. Shichai said that the Pyrrha of Triumph is one of the most influential clans in the kingdom, the core of which is made up of A-rank adventurers. Weiss said that right now he was talking to Mr. Slad, not Shichai. The thief replied that if he wanted to take their leader, then no. This conversation concerned the others as well. The thief crossed his fingers behind his back. Usually in groups there are signs that only the members of the group understand, like the one Shichai made, meaning don't fall for provocations. Weiss said that it would be better for him to discuss it between them. If they knew who he was, then he should understand that it was not a good idea to interfere. Shichai replied that he did not expect the leader of the Black Raven to personally come to recruit anyone and asked who told him about Slad. The Raven replied that their informant preferred to hide his identity and the details were a privilege of the clan. He turned to the hero again, asking if he would like to join them. The hero replied that he did not want to and that he was quite happy with the group he was currently in. Weiss said that he would then leave them and advised the hero to get to know them better and only then make a decision. Ithaca poured her drink on Weiss. The hero screamed internally. Although Ithaca knew the code gestures, she was too drunk to understand them. She screamed that she didn't know who he was, but she wouldn't give him slada. The man grabbed her by the neck, calling her milady and saying that he saw that she had no manners. He asked her if she wanted him to tell her how many vulgar outfits like hers could be bought for the one suit of his that she had ruined. Slad, angry, told him to take his dirty hands off ethics and repeat it again. Weiss was delighted by the power he saw. He let the girl go and said that he in no way wanted to become his enemy. Shichai wondered how much the Black Raven knew about Slade. Weiss said he was sorry their first meeting had gone the way it had, but as he had said, he was not saying goodbye to him yet. Weiss thought that the hero would eventually come to him himself. Ithaca shouted that she would compensate him for his rags in any amount, but she added that he would never see Slaughter again. Weiss apologized for the mess and told her to consider it an apology. Weiss left with superiority. Shichai finally said that one of the reasons why he wants to make a S-rank group is so that such freaks wouldn't even dare open their mouths in their direction.